everyone, and welcome to the Expense Summit 2024. For all of you tuning in from all around the world, good morning, good evening, good afternoon. I'm thrilled that so many of you here today, and over the next few hours, we're going to dive deep into the world of expense management, exploring innovative technologies and hearing from some incredible speakers who will inspire us with their stories and their insights. At Mobile Expense, we're proud to host this summit and support thousands of businesses worldwide in digitizing their receipts and streamlining their expense management. Today, we're excited to give you the latest strategies and help you give you the tools to elevate your own business. I'm Chris, and I'll be your host throughout the whole summit. Now, you might be wondering, what does expense management have to do with food? Well, there are a lot more similarities than you might think. When I was a little boy, I used to spend my summers in New Zealand with my nana. Imagine endless days on the farm, every boy's dream, right? But what made those summers unforgettable wasn't just the freedom. It was the food. Like many of us, we have a very special spot for the meals that we made with our grandparents. My nana, she taught me a lot about food. And as I grew older, I realized that the same lessons, they apply with many aspects of life, including business. She always used to say, Chris, a good recipe relies on 3 key components. Like quality ingredients. Whether it's fresh vegetables, great herbs, or that perfect cut of meat, or maybe that fresh piece of salmon. Whatever you put in your recipe defines the outcome. We've got time, good things, like a slow-cooked roast or a hearty stew, or maybe a bolognese that you've been working on the whole day. These things just can't be rushed. The same thing goes with anything worth doing. We need love. It's about the care and the attention that you give, whether checking the oven. When you go in and you always check in a couple of times and you're making sure that everything's just perfect. Or that meal that you share with your family. Love makes the difference. Now, you still might be wondering, what does expense management have to do with food? Well, like a good recipe, a successful expense management strategy requires a few key ingredients. Number 1, quality tools and processes. Just like food, we need the right ingredients, like technology that simplifies receipt handling, or efficient reimbursement cycles, or smart software. All these pieces make the difference. We need time to refine our processes and ensure that we're avoiding overspending or inefficiencies. A rushed approach can many times lead to costly mistakes. We need care and attention, and that's where you all come in. Whether you're a CFO or you're part of an HR team or you're a founder or you're an accounting assistant, your role is critical in helping the thoughtful approach to expense management. That's why today you're logged in, you're here, and you've come to the right place to learn and improve those strategies. At Mobile Expense, we care about expense management the way that my nana used to care about her cooking. That's why we created this summit, to help you craft the perfect recipe and success in managing those expenses. We brought together some incredible speakers to share their knowledge with you. We've got Raj Hare, the CEO and founder of Tiny Box Academy and Mayflair Maven. We've got Koen, the head of Benelux at Personio. We've got Jorden Oud, the founder and senior project controller at Bold Advice, and many other experts that will share their knowledge with you. We also have a very special guest, and I have the honor of introducing Elliott van de Velde, a chef and entrepreneur. His restaurant, Entropy, was named Discovery of the Year and also a culinary innovator. He'll be sharing his innovative approach to zero-waste cooking later today, and I'm really confident that you will lead with new tools, new strategies, and, of course, recipes that you can bring back to your workplace and your kitchen. The Expense Summit is hosted on the Let's Get Digital platform, and it's designed to make this experience as interactive and conversational as it possibly can be. In the virtual lobby, you'll find everything you need, like live streams of all the sessions and virtual networking tables, and where you can meet our partners and attendee overviews to connect and network with peers. Speaking of tables, I want to make sure that you go and visit the Mobile Expense Networking table. It's a great opportunity to streamline your business and look at discovering ways that you might haven't thought of. And I want you to take advantage of some of the special offers that Mobile Expense has and all the different expense solutions that we offer. Here, you can also create your own tables, and you can sit with colleagues, and why not maybe sit at a random table and have the opportunity to make some new friends. The live chat on the right side is going to be on throughout the whole event. And what I would like to do right now is I want to kind of use the chat function. I want to test it out. So if you can go ahead, go there right now. I want you to let us know where you're tuning in from. Introduce yourself. Say, hey, I'm Chris. I'm from Sweden, but I'm here now. Be sure to use the polls throughout the whole event. We're going to be doing a few of those. And by the end of it, there's actually an opportunity to win something very, very special. The Mobile Expense team has put together something actually quite interesting. I'll be showing that a little bit later, what you will be winning. But I would very much recommend that you go into our polls and you participate in them. Now, let's try it out right now. So what I would like you to do is I'm going to use the first poll. And I'm a big foodie. I love food, and especially the food that I can eat with my hands. You know, when you go to the events and you go to all these food trucks that are all over the place, and you can try all these different nationalities and all these different food cultures. So my question to you is, what food do you prefer to eat with your hands? Is it pizza, is it burgers, or is it tacos? So the first question here, pizza, burger, tacos. So I can see that all of you are quite active. There's a big mix and so forth here. My personal favorite, I'm a big taco guy. I love the taste of a fresh taco. Great ingredients. Sometimes less is more, really focusing on the quality. Now, I am so glad that you guys are here, and I'm so excited to get this show on the road. We've been working on this for months, and we are so excited. In a few minutes, we'll be welcoming our first speaker, but trust me, you'll want to stick around. Because at the end of the summit, Chef Elliott, he will be demonstrating his zero waste recipe. And he'll be offering a fresh perspective on sustainability and innovation. I've heard that sometimes all you need is the most basic ingredients. There's 3 words I've always wanted to say. Everyone, let's get cooking. Now, introducing our first speaker of the day, we have Chef Elliott. He's our keynote. He's going to be sharing his insights. And Chef, I'm going to leave it over to you. Go ahead.
Thank you, Chris, and welcome at Entropy. My name is Elliott van de Velde. I'm the chef and co-founder of this place in the center of Brussels. And Entropy is the gastronomic part of our association, Earth Project. We fight against waste and precarity since 2017. So we saw a lot of things. We tried also a lot of things, and we make a lot of mistakes. When I talk about mistakes, we talk about food cost. We talk about losing time, losing money with people. And so all of our experience bring also a new future for us, and those small changes give us also new opportunities. I will show you how we connect with that. So I am a guy who said pluridisciplinaire in French. So I tried so many things. I made a lot of different works. And one of my favorite one was event manager for some nightclubs. So the hospitality that we create with people, managing also people and everything was the key for me for the future to give happiness and things in just ephemeral timing. So after that, I was really in love with the food. I am an Epicurean, so I was really happy with the food. And I said, okay, I would like to try to make some diner to invite people to create magical things on the table. and I created directly my company, my brand. It was between a mistake and between a crazy idea, because I didn't have knowledge how to manage the good things, how to be every day on the spot and on the rocks, seriously, with my team, with my expenses, with my with everything about just how to manage a company. But the vision was clear, and I started to cook in 2015 after I went into Michelin starred chef restaurant, and I discovered the waste. The waste was one of my priority at that time, because it was just a mess. And with that mess, I said, okay, I want to create something. And with that things, I create the association, and we start to feed people. So you have my point of view of all of those timings, but during all of those timings, you need to run also your business. And every day it was learning, finding solution, create also a new way of thinking, because our industry was very hard with bad process, not digital way, and so it was to find them every day. And in 2017, I made my first event for people in need. It was for the Parc Maximilien here in Brussels, and it was to feed 600 people. It was just crazy. I had 40 volunteers on that day with a lot of food surplus. And I saw that my vision was clear, and it was happening. And it was a huge happening, because I cried for 30 minutes. And I know that it will be the rest of my life to fight against something with an ideal. So in 2020, the COVID came. And with Adeline, we started to think to fight against the food waste and to help the people in need with a larger point of view. So we had a very little kitchen, a team of volunteers, and we tried for the first month to just recuperate food surplus, a lot of things from different farmers, B2B, and other people. And so with that food surplus, we started to feed people in need. And it was really strange, because the vision was suddenly so much bigger, and we create every day something new, something with a new ideal, and we saw that we can have an impact into it. So it was the starting point of a real process that we just put today. So as a chef, and first, there were three people. First, it was a human being, entrepreneur, and chef. And you need to connect all of three personality to be sure that it's running every day with values and an ideal in the future. So as a chef, at the beginning, I was not clear with what was really taken care of, because all of the veggies were nice, but if you don't understand the naturality of your veggies, you cannot understand the waste, and you cannot understand also what you can earn from them as taste and also money, and what you can invest in as money into the field and also into your kitchen, and to experiment those things for the customers. So I think I can take just as an idea the cauliflower, because everyone is buying the cauliflower just like that, but the cauliflower is just the fruit of seeds, and that seeds is just growing with leaves, with the roots, and with flowers. And into a kitchen right now, we create that 100% view of the product, because the product, if you buy from a farmer as we are doing, you can buy the leaves, you can buy the roots, you can buy those flowers, and with all of that, you can create also a most valuable dish, because into the roots you have more taste, and the cauliflower is just the flower of the roots. So just thinking like this give you also the idea how you connect with your business. Because if you think just about I give money to buy someone and I don't care about the rest. No, you must do valuable every details on your business to be sure that you will continue to connect with the rest. As nature, something can go wrong, and it was the same at the beginning with our employees. We give a lot of trust, and sometimes you are just trusting the process, and you find sometimes and generally all the time something goes wrong, and so it was for that also that be very open-minded, creating process into your expenses, creating process into your vision of what you are buying, selling, giving also for the people in need or for your team as advantage and everything. You must track everything every day. So you are sure also that your mistake still yours, but your vision still also yours. So not giving too much trust to them, and if you give that trust, give that with process. Right now, we have a really clear vision of what we are doing every day. It was difficult to explain and also to manage every day, so at the beginning. So we need to find your path, and our path, we find it with the right team. The right team put the right process, and the right process give you also the values alive. So it was zero waste cooking, food waste management, and tracking all of those little details to put valuable things like lactofermentation, preservation, and taking care of the fields into a kitchen and give all of that to our customers for that culinary experience. And right now, I'm really happy to say that it's 100% plant-based with 90% of locality and with, seriously, so many new flavors, so many ways of thinking. And we give that also to the customers, but also to our team, and to create more beautiful things for the next generation. One thing that I really don't like with my team is that everyone is always searching for my bank card to go to search for something that we are just not right on order and everything. So it's always there into a little box, and we lose it like each month. So right now, with as a solution with mobile expense, we find a way to not losing it again, and to just track all of our expenses. So thank you, everyone. Stay tuned, because I have a huge recipe to share with you. See you this afternoon.
Jeff, all those great insights. I love stories from real people. It always makes everything just give you so many great perspectives. So here's our second presentation coming up now, the evolution of market and finance. It's going to be presented by Thibaud, and Thibaud is the guy that you want to have in your corner if you're looking to make finance tech easy and efficient. As CEO of Mobile Expense, he's been helping companies of all sizes scale faster and smarter with expense management solutions. With 15 years of experience working with big names like SAP, IBM, Thibaud's got a ton of great insights in how to solve businesses' challenges and with rich, rich tech. Welcome, Thibaud. So excited to have you. The stage is all yours.
Thank you so much.
That's yours. Take it away.
Thank you. So again, thank you, Chris, for the introduction. Really grateful to be here. The expense management market has undergone a significant transformation in recent years, driven by digitization, automation, the increasing demand for real-time insights. So what really started as a manual, time-consuming process has evolved into what today is a seamless, tech-driven solution. We integrate AI, we use cloud platforms, it's all mobile first. Organizations today expect more than just cost tracking. They seek proactive tools that enhance compliance, improve productivity. They want to be offered data-driven financial insights. At Mobile Expense, we are committed to leading this evolution, empowering businesses of all sizes to manage expenses smarter and more efficiently. But before we go deeper, let me tell you briefly who we are. At Mobile Expense, we specialize in simplifying expense management. We serve businesses of all sizes enterprise, mid-market, small and medium businesses with solutions that automate everything from receipt capture to compliance checks. We operate across Europe and beyond, helping companies reduce time spent on expenses while staying compliant with local laws and regulations. Our mission is simple: make expense management easier and smarter for businesses everywhere. So today I would like to talk about the reason why mobile expense is a growing business, why expense management is a growing business. We are a growing business because we provide a solution to the many complexities within expense management. I'm just going to call out a few. Manual processes, human error, setting up policies, preventing fraud, any kind of system integration, managing compliance, real-time visibility, the whole employee experience, getting to timely and correct reimbursements, handling different payment methods of expenses. Today's expense management isn't just about processing receipts. It's become a complex workflow that needs to balance compliance, control, and transparency. And let's not forget, employees now expect real-time insights to their reimbursements, which adds more pressure to an already difficult task. So for businesses operating across multiple regions, different countries had different tax rules, labor laws, and reporting requirements. This means that finance teams not only manage expenses, but also make sure they comply with all these regulations. Expense management is about governing financial resources flowing between companies and their employees, ultimately impacted by fiscal, labor, and accounting laws. These domains are still highly fragmented within the European Union. More than 30 different countries, leading to a variety of different accounting rules, compliance requirements, tax implications, potential tax exemptions, benefits, reporting requirements, and so on. This forces multinationals to implement localized expense management policies, allowances, any kind of spend caps to minimize tax burden on their employees, maximize spend control, and improve VAT recoverability. Mobile Expense was founded in the year 2000. This is, by the way, our first website. It was already a forward-thinking company that had an approach to simplify and automate expense management for businesses. Despite mobile phones being at that time incapable of handling expenses on the go, the company had the foresight to include mobile in its branding, mobile expense, recognizing the future importance of mobile devices in business operations. Since its inception, mobile expense has consistently been a frontrunner in technology, leveraging cloud-based architecture, AI, automation, and a strong focus on global compliance to stay ahead in the evolving world of expense management. Let's take a step back and have a quick look on how expense management has evolved over the last 2 decades. In the early 2000s, it was all about manual data entry and paper receipts. A simple web user interface would do the trick. But it wasn't until the 2010 that things really start to shift. Apps started trending and software as a service became the new software delivery model where applications are hosted on the cloud and accessed by users over the internet. Instead of purchasing and installing software on individual computers or servers, with SaaS, users subscribe to the software and access it via a web browser. Easy as that. From 2012, mobile apps really took center stage. It was a big break because suddenly expenses could be submitted on the go. 2015 onwards, expense management benefited from localization technologies like Google Maps, and we could digitize mileages in the app instead of customers performing mileage calculations in spreadsheets which are error-prone anyway. In 2016, the expense management process became even more touchless thanks to the scanning technology called OCR. Essentially, OCR enables machines to read text from images or printed material and turn it into digital text that can be edited, searched, and stored electronically. A major advance. In 2019, we were able to add daily allowance into our solutions thanks to a state-of-the-art calculation engine. Then 2020, we added data integration possibilities through APIs. These APIs are connecting financial and expense management tools, like connecting mobile expense with ERPs, to automatically reconcile expenses and receipts. Soon after, we delivered real-time data analysis. Real-time data analysis for expense management is increasingly crucial for businesses to monitor and control spending, identify certain patterns, and optimize the operations. And the latest, proud to say, addition are the payment cards. Payment cards for expense management offer business significant benefits, including better control, fraud reduction, simplified reporting, while all improving employee satisfaction, hugely important, by eliminating the need for personal spending on business-related expenses. These cards, particularly when integrated with advanced expense management software, enhance operational efficiency and provide real-time insights into corporate spending. That brings us, in the end of my timeline, to 2024. So, where are we now? And what's coming in the future of expense management? Looking ahead, the future of expense management is about two things: automation and visibility. AI will continue to play a huge role, not just in automating processes, but in predicting and preventing errors before they happen. Real-time visibility in expenses will help companies make smarter financial decisions on the fly instead of relying on data weeks or months old. Compliance will be built into the system, allowing companies to adapt to new laws and regulations without skipping a beat. And ultimately, expense management will become a completely touchless process. Expenses will be captured, approved, and reimbursed automatically. So as we've seen, expense management has come a long, long way. It's faster, smarter, and more efficient than ever. The road ahead will require even more flexibility, especially as regulations continue to change. The companies that thrive will be the ones that embrace automation and AI early, giving them the tools to stay compliant and in control, while reducing the manual workload for their teams. So the question is, are you ready to take your expense management to the next level?
All right, Thibaud, that was incredible. Thank you so much for sharing so many great insights. I do have a couple of questions here for you coming in, so let me just prepare those. Here we go. So there's a pretty hot topic around AI.
Exactly.
A lot of people are talking about it. The market's talking about it. What and when are we going to integrate AI into the mobile expense products?
That's a great question. I've touched upon it in my pitch, but it's really important to understand for people that mobile expense has been front running. So for us, AI is nothing new really. We've adopted AI in the products already years ago. And we see many more opportunities to continue to use AI to make the product more efficient, faster, more performant. I think there's always a balance to be struck between what finance teams want, which means correctness. The system needs to work properly. And of course, all the creativity and the freedom AI can bring to the end user to make their life more simple and easier. In the end, they want to have swift and correct reimbursements happening while remaining compliant. And AI for sure can make the life easier for both finance teams as for the employees.
Interesting. If we go back in time and just look at like what have you seen like the adoption of digital expense solutions, how it's evolved over the past few years and so forth?
I can say it's really interesting. So as I went through my timeline, by the way, you saw mobile popping up, and then my question was a few years ago, like, how many people are really using the mobile app, which is actually a basic thing, only available since 2014, 15, right? And we see like people still, have sometimes some hesitation to change to new ways to adopt the technology. So yeah, as we can push a lot new innovation, and we do continuously, but it's also important that we help our end users learn to embrace and adopt the new technologies like OCR scanning, like the mobile app on the go, or maybe provide more trust to finance teams, and they can have more auto approvals in the system without needing to check everything personally, right? So it's also a bit about change management, I think. But for sure, technology is there, it's available, and we make it fully available for our customers to adopt.
I mean, there's one piece, if a company is like struggling with balancing costs, from just naturally, I mean, the first thing one would look at is maybe travel. How are European companies balancing cost control with the need for travel and employee flexibility today, do you think?
I think since COVID, we came a long way, of course, in that sense, right? Now, already seeing a few years after COVID, we see a lot of the new ways of traveling or new ways employees are working for companies are still in place. Like I think during COVID, many people moved away from the big cities, started work remotely. I think, of course, many people came back to the city, but not all. I think employers are more open and flexible to see where people need to be working, how active should they be, how many times should they come into the office. And secondly, we also see many employees taking the advantages of that liberty to combine work and pleasure. They call it pleasure, where people say like, I'm going to work 1 week remote and going to extend it 1 week of holiday with my family. Or maybe want to go to an offsite with the office and then spending a weekend with the family and the kids in the same city. So all that is, I think, a big advantage to everybody, having more liberties to combine work with pleasure. And I think companies are adopting well.
I mean, I love that. I'm gonna steal that pleasure comment. I think that's a great one. If a company is starting off, let's say like they're in their evolution of this, so they're kind of like thinking, okay, this could be something we want to do. What would be your advice for companies starting their expense management their whole transformation in this whole topic today?
Yeah, a good question. So first of all, like we can set up customers in like merely days to set up a certain process. I think it all starts with thinking of what do you want, how do you want to set up a certain policy, and so on and so on. What we do see with customers who mature through using our platform is that the more they mature, the more they become more efficient, the more they're able to do more automation, tweak rules to make them run faster, which is really key. Secondly, we also see the platform is really helpful in fraud detection and fraud prevention. So also there, we see customers, maybe not in the first run of implementation, but in the second or third run, implement more tools, tweaks, and process to make sure they capture that in time.
Wow. I mean, there's so many things you can explore. I know that a lot of top management, it's all about results.
Exactly.
So can you share maybe some ROIs or some tangible benefits if an organization is realized that they want to really implement like an expense management solution?
So the nice thing about expense management is that the ROI is really clear. We also use certain ROI calculators that make this clear for the customer. I think what customers really appreciate on expense management is the ROI is much bigger than the cost or the time to implement. So specific numbers can be given for specific cases, but in general, people see a quite nice ROI after implementation. And also that ROI continues to increase over time. Again, as customers become more mature, are more able to smartly implement the right process and to balance the fact of control versus not burdening employees with a lot of manual entry. It's really interesting business. Customers super happy. And by the way, many of the customers we see, many prospects are still like running a manual, paper-based, tedious, time-consuming process. So you can imagine the ROI benefit of digitizing already that part of the process. Interesting.
I got one more question for you.
Of course.
What are the most sought after features or integrations from customers in this space?
So we're in expense management really sitting a bit between what I call finance and HR, right? So to have a working expense management process, you want to have a seamless connection with service providers like payment providers, banks, VT recovery solutions, and of course travel, because travel and expense is a big thing together. On the other hand, we also need to have integrations with ERP and accounting systems, HR and payroll systems, and now we also integrate with many digital and mobility providers, right? So in terms of integrations, we integrate with all of them to make sure it's a coherent process. People get full visibility on travel spend, business spend, and we can make sure that correct and swift reimbursement can happen through integration with ERP, accounting, HR, payroll systems. So all of those are very relevant for expense management.
Wow. Thibaud, it's been an absolute blast. Thank you so much for sharing all your great insights. It was a pleasure having you.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, likewise. All right, everyone. That was great. We are now going into another awesome presentation. This one lined up for you. We're talking about employee engagement, the key to compliance and efficiency in expense management. I'm going to be welcoming Julien, and he is all about making sure customers get the best experience possible. As Chief Customer Officer at Mobile Expense, he spent almost a decade performing and helping companies support in the best possible way. Julien's is all about giving the lowdown, and he's great when it comes to customer success and about driving business in that sense. If you want to hear all about the human side of technology, you're going to want to lean into this presentation. Julien, welcome. The floor is all yours, my friend.
Thank you, Chris. Good morning, everyone. Welcome. Hi, Chris. As Chris mentioned, my name is Julien. I'm currently the CCO at Mobile Expense, and I know I'm the last speaker between you and the break, so I'll try to be as crisp as possible. And there is one thing my team and I are caring for at Mobile Expense is making sure our customers are successful. And in the small world of customer success, there is something that we are all striving for, is engagement. We are all talking about how can I get my customer engaged, how can I make sure that I raise the engagement, how can I engage with my peers and colleagues. This is a big thing, and as a means of an introduction today with you, I would like to reflect a little bit as a starting point on what is engagement exactly. I believe we all have a deep feeling of what engagement means for each and every one of us, but I think it's a bit more difficult to define precisely. So I try to put something a bit there, because is engagement like being involved into something? Is it just being involved, or do I really need to be motivated into doing something? Or is it something that has something to do with focus, that I need to really give in some attention, some time? Do I need to contribute? Or even bigger, do I need to be an active participant into whatever activity, event, community I'm participating in? Shall I go one step further? Is it about dedication? Or is it simple about doing something and enjoying what I'm doing? Do I need to trust the people with whom I'm engaging? Or is it even further, is it about loyalty? And I think we all have our own interpretation of engagement. Personally, I believe it's a bit of all of those. Maybe for you it's just a few of those words, maybe it's all of them, maybe it's none of them. But ultimately, I would say, and for the sake of argument today, we're going to all agree with me that engagement is first and foremost about connection and relationship. And it can be connection about, someone, a brand. Arguably, before being engaged in life, it's good to have a relationship first, in some specific cases. We can have a connection with a specific product, with a specific brand. For those who know me, I'm a runner, and I have a favorite running brand when it comes to shoes. It's called ASICS, and my first connection with that brand was because of their mindset. It's like, oh well, they have a good mindset, something that talks to me. And obviously they make good product as well, so that helps. Also being very, very engaged. But it was important to first get hooked there and get this connection, and then I developed my own relationship with that brand. There is something about that is important, not only as a supplier in front of a customer or with your friends, families and peers, but it's also important within your organization, and how to make sure not only you're engaged with, as I was mentioning at the beginning, your customer, for example, but also how your colleagues and employees and teammates are engaged inside your organization. Because if there's one thing we love in customer success, is engagement, but is also being data-driven. And that's why we refer to a few important points. And I have a few stats for you today. Engaged employees are 60% less likely to make mistakes compared to disengaged employee. That's a study from Gallup, and that's huge. That's really significant, because on top of that, it has also been proven by HR Drive that disengaged employee cost about 30% more than engaged employee to an organization. And this cost can come from non-compliance, error, sometimes fraud. It's not only people making mistakes, but it's also the time you spend to correct those mistakes, the time you spend to do additional training, the time you spend to make sure that those people get engaged. And it's not a magic pill. You have to find the right way of doing so, because otherwise, yeah, it costs time, it costs money in the end, and it has a significant impact on how you run your business. So how do we raise engagement? Well, I'm glad you asked. In travel and expense management, because that's our main topic today, we have identified 3 main pillars in which you need to focus if you want to raise the engagement of your teammate internally. Policies, training, and the tool you use. Policies. First of all, you need to have a clear policy, fair policy, and very importantly, easy to find. It is extremely important that your colleagues, employee, and teammate can find a T&E policy, that they know what they can expense, how they can expense it, how is the workflow, how is the process. It needs to be fair, because as an employee, when I read the policy, I need to make sure that, well, the policy is fair for me as for everyone else in the company. And it needs to be clear. I don't need to think. I don't need to be like, oh, but can I do that or not? Yes, no. It needs to be crystal clear. By having such a policy, you can raise the compliance by up to 30%, which is huge. It's massive because, again, don't forget that raising engagement and which will raise the compliance will save you time and will save you money in the end. The next one is training. We all give training, especially to new employees when they arrive and they have tons of tools that they need to review and they need to learn how to use, and rules and policy and how the company is working, the organization, and blah, blah, blah. And we give them a training on each and every tool here and there. Well, that's nice and all, but we all know after a couple of hours, even days, weeks, and months, we lose a lot of what we learn, especially if we don't use it on a regular basis. So it is really important to make sure that there is a continuous learning process in place to ensure that the people that are going to use this tool are fully aware on how they work. And last but not least, having a user-friendly, centralized tool can also boost significantly the engagement. It's important not only for the well-being of the user to make sure that they can find the tool, they can use it, but it's also very important for you to have something that's harmonized across your group. So let's dive in a little bit more into the detail on those 3 points. The first one, policy. First and foremost, do not hesitate to leverage the knowledge of your provider. And I would argue that's true for any tool. Internally, you have HR tool, ERPs, CRM, whatever. You have a provider of all of those tools that knows the best practice. They have hundreds, if not thousands, of customers. We at Mobile Expense have seen thousands of different expense policy from our own customer. We have seen the one from our peers. We know what's working in the expense industry and in the travel industry. So really leverage the knowledge of your supplier and provider, because they can help you refine and build your policy so you can have the best on the market. And I'm sure you have a good internal policy. You can make it better with the support of your provider. So very, very important, leverage the knowledge of your provider. It's their core business. It's not yours. So don't hesitate to use them. Once you get that, align your policy with your company value. It's nice to have a very standardized best practice policy, but does it fit with your company value? Maybe you are a company that's lean a bit more into trust, that you want to have a policy that's a bit more lenient. Or maybe you care a bit more about control because you are in an industry that requires that level of control. So you need to align it with your company value. And also very, very important, something that's really dear to our heart in the customer success world, align it with your goal and success metrics. Like, what do you want to achieve with this policy? Where do you lean into? What do you indicate to your user and teammate what they can and can't do? So it's really important to have a very good alignment and very good knowledge and basic of your policy. And I will insist again, this policy needs to be easy to find. So as a user, I don't need to search on all intranet or whatever in someone's computer what is the latest version of the policy. It needs to be easy to find, accessible, it needs to be fair, it needs to be clear. Next point, about training. Again, leverage the training option of your provider. And it's true for all of the tool you're using. They have the material, they have the experience, they know the tool perfectly well, they know exactly what the user are expecting, they know exactly what kind of ticket they're receiving. So use that knowledge so they can provide you the best training out there that will reinforce the usage of your employee. The training material that you will get from your provider, make it accessible and make it visible directly from your employee onboarding. So as soon as they arrive in the company, they don't have to read all the policy and the training material and things like that, but make sure they know where it is so they can access it whenever they need it. And last but not least, recognize that internally you have some champion. You have some people that know the tool very well and that can help and support their colleagues for small questions. And it is really very, very helpful for them to, again, be more engaged. Last but not least, centralized tool. Again, and I repeat myself, but ensure the consistency and I would argue the harmonization of your tool with your provider. The concept here is you want to give a little bit of freedom for all the local team so they can be empowered to use the tool in the best way possible, but you also really, really want to have something that's harmonized and consistent. You don't want everyone to do something with your tool because then you have a centralized tool that is used in 20 different ways and then you can't find your little ones after that. So it's really important to ensure that with the support of your provider, you have something that makes sense, that is user-friendly and usable locally, but also makes sense globally. And that's where your, again, provider can help you. Get the engagement metric. We all do some satisfaction survey internally on how do you like that tool? Is that tool good? How do you find this and this and that? That's good. But satisfaction is not the same as engagement. And your provider has the engagement metric. Like in travel and expense management, we have something that's really important for us and for all the industry is having a mobile app that can make the recording of expense so much easier on a day-to-day basis when you do your expense. That is critical that the user use it, and it can shift the engagement dramatically. So if you don't know how many of your employees are using the mobile app, then it is very, very difficult for you to know why they are dissatisfied, for example, on how you can raise the engagement. If you get that metric, then you can work towards that. So that's really important to, again, work with your provider to get those engagement metric. And last but not least, again, review the success criteria on a regular basis. And I'm saying that because initially, you can buy a travel and expense management tool because you want to have more control. You want to have control on your expense. You want to make sure your policy are respected. You want to make sure you are compliant with the law. And that's really important for you. Okay, nice. You implement the tool. You use it for a couple of years. It does what it should do. Works great. Then after a few years, you realize that this tool is actually a very good asset for your team member, that it makes their life easier. It raises their engagement. They're happier using that tool than having an Excel sheet or just bringing paper receipt. Use that to review your success criteria, because at some point you're like, okay, I have a good control. Maybe there was too much control. Maybe we can be a bit more, maybe we can empower a bit more our colleagues. Maybe we should focus a bit more on user happiness and user friendliness of the tool. Maybe we should shift a little bit our success criteria, because that will be really important for you and for your supplier to know what is the criteria you aim to, so you can use the tool in the best possible way. That's it. That was my little presentation about how raise the employee engagement using a travel and expense management tool.
Julien, that was incredible. Well done. There's so many great insights. Q&A, I've heard that you are very much going to take in all your questions and you will be able to answer those behind the scenes.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Looking forward to doing that.
So thank you so much for sharing all your insights. And yeah, thanks for sharing.
My pleasure, Chris.
Thanks.
Cheers.
All right, everyone. We have come to a really interesting step. Two things that I would like to share. One, I'm very surprised. I've heard that the polls, we've got a really leaning towards the pizza side of things here. I'm a big taco guy, as I mentioned. So, you know, when it comes to pizza, I do love a great pizza. But, okay, I see where the kind of the audience here is taking this. I did mention before that at the end of these sessions, at the end of the summit, we have a really interesting poll going on. And there is a really interesting prize that one could be winning. This prize is one of these bags. And this bag really is filled with lots of great things, okay? So if we just look at it, take one little second, we can kind of share it. We can go do this. Have a quick look. In it, we have a pretty incredible apron. I mean, who wouldn't want to wear this at home? I'm definitely going to try steal me one of these. It's got a pretty cool logo. It's got it all set up. Good fabric. You can wear that and you can give it a really good sense of, you know, being able to cook. And I think you can look pretty professional in one of these. Okay, what else do we have in the bag? We do have a cutting board. I really do love a great cutting board. And one of these, you can, I mean, you got all your different kinds of cuts and meats and so forth you can put on it. But this is a great thing you can kind of utilize. Finally, in this, we have two more things. A is the spoon. This spoon isn't just any kind of spoon. It's a wooden spoon. And it's pretty good from that perspective. So I would go ahead and look at that. We've got a pretty good kit. So you know what? Who doesn't want one of these? So at the end of the day, make sure you utilize the polls. Make sure to sign up. At the end, we're going to do a big spinning wheel, and we're going to choose one key winner. Now, the instructions right now, I want everyone to take a little bit of a quick break. Get some coffee, fill up on tea, maybe go for a quick toilet break. Stretch your legs, get ready, because we've got so many great speakers lined up for you. And the next one coming up, I think you do not want to miss. So 10:20, get ready, and I'll see you in a bit. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Expense Summit. A few of you have had a chance to fill up on some tea, maybe a little bit of coffee. Maybe you had a chance to grab a bite to eat. Because we all know we're at the Expense Summit. We're talking about food. I don't know about you, but I'm starting to get a little bit hungry as well. Now, if we welcome just all the new guests that have come in, we're on this very special platform. And I would very much encourage you all to take advantage of the whole platform. Network with peers. Go and sit down on a lot of the networking tables and ask questions and share insights and maybe get to know a little bit new friends. Mobile Expense is a great table. I would very much ask you to ask questions and engage with many of them. We've had some really good sessions this morning. We've learned from Chef Elliott, and I really, really love great stories. I love to get the insight of what it is to get behind the scenes, behind even the kitchen from really, really famous chefs. We've heard Thibaud talk about AI and technology, and we've heard Julien share the human touch when it comes to technology. But oh boy, am I excited about this one. Diversification, the key ingredients of financial innovation. That is what's coming up right now. Raj Hare is a force of nature. She is the CEO of Tiny Box Academy. And with over 30 years of experience across finance, tech, leadership, Raj is all about empowering people and companies make big changes, whether it's through social leadership or diversity in the workplace. Plus, she's a TED speaker and a coach with the top executives. Now, I really want you all to lean into this one and get ready for some really special insights on how to thrive in today's fast-paced business world. It is my honor to welcome Raj. Thank you so much for being here.
Hi, thanks, Chris.
And lead us the way.
Great. Thank you so much. Hello, everyone. How are we today? With that introduction, I have to say, I'm going to go forward a little. Here we go. So with that introduction, hopefully you're not disappointed now that I'm on the stage. But you might already be thinking, oh boy, another woman talking about diversity. What's this got to do with finance? What's this got to do with expenses? What's it got to do with financial innovation? Well, let's see if I can convince you that not only does diversity include all of us, but inclusive innovation is a possibility for your organization. So my name is Raj Hayer. I'm the founder of Tiny Box Academy, a creative think tank for innovation. And let's start with the obvious. Why not? So when you look at me, what do you see? First, maybe you see that I'm a woman, right? So there might be some gender stereotypes. Then maybe you see I'm a woman of color, Indian heritage, and there might be some cultural stereotypes. And even people who are from India sometimes make assumptions based on what I look like. And they'll talk to me in another language, and I don't understand them because I was born in England. Maybe next you see I'm a slightly more mature person, so there might be some generational stereotypes. What could I know about technology as an almost 50-year-old woman? I currently live in Germany, so there's a few immigrant stereotypes there. The fact is, it's instinctive. We all label, and we do it almost immediately, whether it's good or bad, based on the information and the experiences we've collected over our lifetimes. This is the entry point for all of our interactions. So let's look at what you might not know about me by just looking at me. I'm British and I'm Canadian, so I have cultural and geographical diversity and understand those two markets very well since most of my financial experience was in Canada. I have had 2 major surgeries. At 19, I had metal plates put in my head from a car accident, and at 23, I had heart surgery, open heart surgery, because I had a heart aneurysm. So what does this mean? It means I almost died twice, which means I've built resilience and adaptability. I'm decisive in my decision making. I can take risks. I lead change and transformation because I've been through change and transformation. My Myers-Briggs, or 16 personalities type, is INFJ, which means I prefer autonomy when I'm working. I need to have the decision-making capability. I don't like too much red tape or politics, so I tend to distance myself, and I don't believe in hierarchy, which is probably why I don't work in corporations. My global executive MBA means I've studied in several markets around the world. A PMP qualification means I've led multi-million-dollar projects. My MSA qualification means I understand individuals' professional preferences, but you wouldn't know any of that just looking at me. How much do you know about the individuals on your team? Are you leveraging them as well as you could be? As Chris mentioned, I've got 30 years of experience in management, 15 in the financial services industry, and during my journey, I've also experienced different levels of leadership and management. As an example, in Canada, I launched the National Mystery Shop program. Now, this was going to influence the products we developed, the services that we were giving, and I wanted to include every single branch across Canada. Now, if you know Canada, that's a vast amount of space. We wanted to shop even the people who were 2,000 miles away. The reason is I wanted people to feel included. It was as simple as that. And we got feedback that some of these remote places, they actually felt like they were part of the bank for the first time because we included them. And at the time, my leaders liked stand-up meetings every Monday. So, and I love this concept, it's 10 minutes, you stand up, and the team talks about the challenges they've got in their projects. Now, during one of these meetings, we realized that with a slight adjustment, we could save $2 million just by using the same delivery platform for our branches. That's how effective it was. Then I went from creative, innovative work, total autonomy to achieve the objective and winning awards internally and externally to a role where I was clear I was the diversity hire. I was told I'd be launching a new stakeholder program. But instead of creating change or transformation, I sat in a corner and I adjusted PowerPoint presentations. Was I underutilized? Yes, definitely. How long do you think I stayed in that job? And now I'm stuck. Thank you. Talent acquisition costs in financial services can go up to $28,000 per hire. Talent engagement can increase retention and reduce attrition. And another example is when I worked in real estate secured lending, we realized that a lot of people were being turned down for mortgages because the credit bureau data didn't match the data they'd given us in the application. A lot of consumers don't know their credit bureau history. So we decided, hey, we'll pop that data right into the application, then they just have to verify it, and we'd improve our instant adjudication and instant mortgage approvals. Now, technology was the easy part. Technology often is the easy part, but innovation is not just about technology. It's about solving the real problems. And the barriers in this case were the people. I had stakeholders in the room from legal, regulation, credit bureau reps, product managers, marketing, communication, sales, and more and more and more. But they were not the most relevant people to the solution. We needed the frontline staff who were going to use the application in the room as we were designing it. And by doing that, we realized actually it wasn't just about the credit bureau data. It was about taking a 14-screen application process down to 4 and simplifying the process for them so that they could even have transparency and turn the screen to their customers. And this is the problem. Sometimes we don't have the right people in the room, or we have the right people in the room and we're not using them. You have all the solutions that you need in your team, but if you're not leveraging them, you're not using them. And when this happens, when they're not feeling engaged, they're not going to innovate. In fact, they can even become barriers to the innovation and potentially add financial risk to your projects later on. So, the core component of any change, transformation, or innovation, it's the people. And we want you to leverage the diversity in your team so you can develop innovative products. So what are the key ingredients for success in this? Well, I believe they're the people and the synergy of their ideas based on their diversity. So how do we tap into that? Well, first, the leadership. We need to talk about leadership, and we're going to talk about that first. Then second, it's about how do you unleash that innovation in your teams. But before we get to that, we have some challenges when it comes to the financial industry. There's a reason we don't have much diversity in finance. First, it comes down to a lack of trust we have in the financial industry and its leaders. Global average for trust fell by 5% year over year, making financial services among the least trusted sectors on the planet, tying with the fashion industry. And we barely beat social media by like this much. Trust in banks has always been low due to lack of transparency, but what was surprising here is that we're adding digital components and people aren't trusting us in the digital areas either. Trust in digital payments is only 58%. Wealth management advisory online, only 42%. Do stakeholders trust you as a leader? Do they trust your company? Second, of course, we're being disrupted at an alarming rate and we are not keeping up. Over 28% of traditional banking services are expected to be disrupted in the next 4 years. And part of that stems from the feeling that people do not think the financial services serve them, that they serve the needs of a few, but not all. 62% of stakeholders believe financial services weren't designed for them. Could it be because they weren't in the room when the design was taking place? And 53% don't believe in a shared vision, which means that diverse talent is not interested in working in finance either. So you got your work cut out for you. I believe that leaders and employees can play a critical part in changing that story and that narrative and gain back trust through social leadership. Social leadership is the currency of trust. It is the core of all my executive coaching. Do your stakeholders trust you? It is not only about leading diverse teams, but attracting talent for future workforce needs. And secondly, unlocking innovation through diversity. I call it inclusive innovation. That means you're developing and implementing ideas, services, products that ensure participation and benefits for all. The participation principle, those that are affected by the solution have to be part of the conversation. They've got to be in the room. And once you have acquired that talented workforce, don't let them languish, because they are the not-so-secret ingredient. But before we get into that, let's define diversity, because what do I mean when I say it's all of us? This is where the financial principle of diversification comes into play. It's how we allocate our capital, right? To reduce risk in our financial portfolio. Don't put all your eggs in one basket. Well, these same principles apply to our workforce, and diversifying them will help you reduce your risk. If you diversify your people portfolio, you can potentially stem the effects of demographic risks and returns by tapping into global talent pools. However, just like a financial portfolio, it's got to be managed effectively, and that's through a culture that fosters collaboration and inclusion. But which diversity counts, right, Raj? What diversity am I looking at? Well, anything that makes you think differently. I'm going to introduce you to a very simplified diversity map. And the fact that it's not simple shows you that you can't simplify diversity. And it effectively illustrates, though, what's visible and what's invisible. Now, I always go with the idea of human first. If we think of every human being as an individual, then all the rest of the diversity can fall into place, but we'll always treat that person with respect and kindness. And then we can bring them in, gain buy-in, gain trust. But let's look at the diversity factors. So we tend to focus on what's visible, like we did earlier. So of course, most obvious, woman or man, white, brown or black, young or old. And then the next level is secondary visible factors. Education, are you married or single? Are you a parent? Again, the most accessible information. What we often miss is everything else. How we operate, how we learn, how we problem solve, how we make decisions. Simple things like personality diversity can impact your inclusivity and innovation. For instance, introversion versus extroversion. It's a very common one. And a trend that took the business world by storm about a decade ago, or maybe 15 years ago, I'm a bit old, was open workspaces, right? No assigned desk, no walls, not even cubicles, and enforced coffee breaks to network with your peers. In other words, my worst nightmare. I'm an introvert. If I don't have a safe place to go to every day, and uninterrupted time, so I don't want to take coffee breaks all the time, then it throws me off my game. I can't innovate. How can you innovate when you're not feeling comfortable in your own work environment? What about convergent and divergent thinking? Convergent thinking is the process of finding a single solution to the problem. Divergent thinking it involves generating multiple diverse ideas and lots of solutions to the given problem. Now imagine that frustration. If there you are trying to get to a solution and the person you're talking to is just talking about a million different ideas that don't even seem related to the solution you're talking about. Well, can you imagine how frustrating that would be for both of you? Well, the magic is in meeting halfway, understanding each other, finding the ideas that actually could push you forward. This is how you leverage this unique ability to generate innovative solutions. Culture is the next level, and that can include how we handle conflicts, our competitive drivers, time management skills, etc. Do you know your teammates' working styles? Are you leading them in the correct way if you're a leader? We all process energy and operate differently in different work environments. And if we don't understand that, then we can't unlock inclusive innovation. An organization includes hierarchy, industry, and divisions. And the point is, it goes on and on and on. Diversity is complex. It's not easy. If it was, everyone would be doing it. It requires leaders who want to understand the human first. They want to ensure that they're motivating people the right way, giving them the purpose that they're looking for in their work. Because if leading was easy, then everyone would be doing it. And we don't have time to deep dive into all of the diversity, so we'll take a moment for one of the most obvious, visible ones, gender diversity. So if we look at risk, you know, the assumption is in the stereotypes that men are sometimes aggressive when it comes to pursuing growth opportunities, right? High risk, high return. And women are generally risk averse, leading to a more thoughtful approach, which can be needed in certain economic situations. You can see how a balance between the two might actually be the most effective diversification plan. For collaboration, men may emphasize efficiency, competitive growth, metrics, performance. Women are known for fostering more collaborative environments, open communication, employee welfare, customer retention. But what's needed when? Different types are needed, different types of collaboration are needed in different parts of the organization, in certain projects. So they could both be useful, you just have to understand where. And what about expense management? Well, men might emphasize immediate return on investment, short-term gains, cost-cutting measures, and women might focus on strategies for long-term sustainability, prioritizing ethical spending, gender pay equity, employee satisfaction, which are all important factors for the upcoming generation of talent. The point is we need both perspectives. One is not better than the other. Now you might be asking, well, how much of a difference does this diversity actually make? Well, I like to refer to it as the diversity dividend. Qualitatively, we cannot create solutions if we don't have the people in the room. We all know the seatbelt example. Seatbelts were designed by men, for men, and therefore a lot of women get injured in cars. What you might not know is that we are still not required to use female test dummies when we're testing cars. It's still only male test dummies, which means that though women get into accidents less, they are 73% more likely to be injured. But qualitatively, the numbers don't lie. It's higher return on sales, it's higher operating margin, it's higher profit, higher earnings per share, higher ROI. I mean, do I need to go on? There's so many studies illustrating the economic benefit of inclusion initiatives. Diversity and inclusion are a superpower, right? They accelerate financial growth. They consistently outperform the industry median, yet we still don't implement talent attraction initiatives or change our culture to maximize on this. So these were only a few diversity factors. Just imagine if we leveraged all diversity factors. So if we know this, if we know that managing diversity and inclusion effectively can result in these kind of results, then how can we achieve them? Well, we need to attract the talent and we need to engage the talent. So let's start with leadership first in attracting talent, because as some of you may be aware, by 2050, Europe will have a deficit of 30 million working age adults. The talent pipeline is in jeopardy. So when I'm asked, what do social networks and community influence have to do with leadership? Well, my response is everything. It's where the stakeholders and the talent are. And shouldn't you be where the stakeholders and the talent are? Trust is the foundation of influence. And if you're not there, the narrative is happening without you, for your company, for your competitors, for your clients, for your employees. You have to be there. Social media is a communication tool that allows you to build relationships throughout your entire stakeholder ecosystem. 82% of talent on LinkedIn, 82% of talent search LinkedIn before considering a job. And yes, brand matters, but actually they're looking at your leaders and your employees. They want to know about the culture. They want to know what you care about, what you stand for, what your values are. Every leader can use their influence to power the brand. So how are you using it to influence and attract talent? Of course, a visibly diverse leadership team sends a strong signal about the company's commitment to inclusion, which is important for attracting talent. And let's be honest, how attractive are you? What are you promising your talent? Are your competitors doing a better job out there than you are? Something to consider, because bad reputation can reduce your talent recruitment by 75%. So what are you doing to attract that talent? Well, this is where social leadership can help you. First, know what you value and represent that. Social representation are your ideals, they are your values. They orient how you operate with stakeholders. Stakeholders do care what you believe. 60% of people choose a place to work based on the alignment to beliefs and values. 64% invest in companies based on alignment to their values and their beliefs. But they can't know what you believe if you're not sharing it. So when your values align clearly with your company's activities, it provides a kind of transparency that will set you apart. Here is a leader who shares his values. His name is Dan Price, CEO of Gravity Payments. He determined that a person's financial stability or situation should not have any bearing on how they perform at work. So what did he do? He tried to remove the threat of socioeconomic diversity. He raised his firm's minimum salary in 2015 to $70,000 by slashing his own salary of $1.1 million to make it happen. So what happened? His revenue grew by 300% over a 6-year period. During the pandemic, his staff offered to take pay cuts so that he wouldn't have to lay anybody off. They never have to post for a job. They get 300 applicants every single position through referral alone. And he has a 90% employee retention rate in an industry where the average is 68%. And he still continues to post about his values and beliefs, calling out other leaders to do the same. Second, engage and build influence. Sharing online makes you feel like a real person. And people follow people. So make your brand an attractive place to work, because you have to be there to have a voice. Social participation is the name of the game, and you have to participate to play. 81% of stakeholders believe leadership should be personally visible. Attracting talent and clients is a crucial part of company success. Plus, who doesn't want to attract good people and good colleagues that they actually want to work with? This is Dropbox. They're a digital content sharing and hosting platform. They use their brand channel to highlight employees. So employees go online and they post something and they use the LinkedIn hashtag Life Inside Dropbox. And then the brand will frequently repost and share those employees' stories and content. Not only does this increase the influence of the company culture inside the company, but it also influences external perception because it shows that they value their employees. More than that, their employees become brand advocates, increasing employee attraction, engagement, and retention. And last but not least, this is where innovation lives. Think about the bigger picture. What do you care about in this world? Economic growth, environmental impact, gender equality, social responsibility is a customer expectation now. 60% of stakeholders expect leaders to be visible and talking publicly on societal issues. And this is how you make it impactful. The more voices we have working towards the big goals, the more change we can make overall. When I was at the Swan Bank in Canada, they had a wonderful initiative called Habitat for Humanity. Having been without a home for a year when I was a teenager, this was an initiative that checked all the boxes: values and beliefs, participation in the community, and social responsibility because we were doing something good. It hit all the boxes. And because our whole team did it, the team bonding created trust, and we were doing something good, so we felt good. Now, I must confess that this is the only time that I've put up drywall, and for future homeowners, I think I should stick to painting. But in the meantime, this bank still posts about all the great things they do in the community, all the cleanup they do, all this great Habitat for Humanity, JDRF bike rides. They still post about it because now they have a platform to share the good things that they're doing, and their employees do too. The benefit of embracing social leadership is that you can create cohesion across your brand and network with shared values, ideas, practices, communicating in real time where your stakeholders are, and being part of a global community responsible for societal issues. Social leadership is now a core business function, and it creates one brand vision, but you have to be there to have the conversation and be part of the narrative. So now that you've attracted all that great talent, you've got to inspire them, right? Trust and integrity. Inclusion innovation can help us create inclusive solutions. It's diversity at its core. Inclusive innovation can change the world. So how can we consciously and intentionally create engagement and innovate? Well, let's face it, we're all in the same boat. We're all going to see the same challenges. But if your employees don't feel like they're part of the team and that you guys are on the same level and that they are valued, they are going to jump ship. Engaging diversity is the key to meaningful innovation. Inclusivity can set the stage for lasting innovation. Now, firms that demonstrate inclusivity are likely to retain their employees, especially if they feel that their experiences and perspectives are valued. When we want to get fit, we might hire a personal coach, right? We hire a personal coach. It's not because we don't know how to work out or that we need to work out. We need the accountability. We need an accountability partner to make sure we show up at the gym and do it. Well, that's what quotas are. Diversity quotas are also just accountability. But let me just preface that by saying it is a shift in company culture that does far more to leverage diversity than just meeting quotas. Promoting diversity without creating an inclusive environment diminishes your long-term success. Again, when Google was creating those open workspaces and we had ping pong tables and couches and napping pods and everyone wanted to be Google, right? Cutting edge, innovative. So what did they do? They built the open workspaces. What do you think happened? Absolutely nothing. Without the trust and the culture that supports this kind of creativity and this kind of dynamic, the rest is useless. So use talent diversity and leverage their unique lens. For instance, is this dog sitting, standing, or lying down? The answer changes depending on which piece of the picture or lens you use. So consider the whole picture and include every voice. Include stakeholders in the conversations, or risk designing products that only work for a select few of the fraction of the users, missing out on a full spectrum of user needs and potential markets. So I've pulled out a couple of examples for you, a couple of use cases. Launched in China, and Financial Sesame Credit developed an innovative credit scoring system. What they did was they used social media activity and online buying behavior to assess creditworthiness. In their team, they included data scientists, behavioral psychologists, financial experts, and local market specialists. Approximately 98% of their credit balances were underwritten by other parties, and their delinquency rate of these loans have been historically low at 1.5%. This innovation has helped provide financial services to millions of Chinese consumers who lacked traditional credit histories. Using diversity to improve problem identification and to solve the right problem can be effective. A diverse workforce allows you to better connect with and serve a diverse client base. Our educated workers are coming up through fast expanding markets, 70% plus from Brazil, India, China, Africa. Unsurprisingly, this is where financial inclusion is also needed and prominent. M-Pesa, launched in Kenya in 2007, created a mobile banking system. The team included technologists from Vodafone, anthropologists who studied Kenyan money transfer habits, local financial experts from Safaricom. Now, Safaricom has a 50-50 ratio of men to women. They are reaching 40% of female representation in management next year. Well, they've increased year over year 19.5%. They have 34 million active users in Kenya, 66 million in Africa, and they have with 21 billion transactions processed. But what's most impressive is that women finally received money directly into their wallets, giving them independence, security, and certainty. Broadening your market understanding helps serve diverse markets better. Improved representation in your team leads to innovative solutions for different demographics. Launched in 1968, MSCI decided in 2020, when the pandemic hit, to create a diverse by design teams, a hybrid work model. The initiative was led by Tia Counts, Chief Responsibility and Chief Diversity Officer, and they included employees from all demographics, all roles, and all levels. And while correlation doesn't always equal causation, the results after they implemented this program were staggering. So from 2020 to 2023, revenue grew by approximately 63% to 2.5 billion. Net income doubled to 1.15 billion. But we shouldn't need a pandemic to create diverse by design teams, should we? Simply meeting employees where they are can help. For instance, Dell implemented a connected workplace program in 2009. Their transformation enables staff to work anywhere at any time. Now think about that. They get to choose both where they work and when they work. So they can plan their workday around their life rather than their life around their workday. And they made sure they maintained team collaboration, efficiency, strong connections, and communication through the process, which increased productivity, decreased their office space costs, IT costs, and the talent acquisition went up, because who doesn't want to work for a company that allows you to live your life? Diverse teams are often more adaptable to change, means they have quicker responses to market shifts or things like a pandemic. Now, I did a study 5 years ago for an enterprise solutions management company in London. And I was told before I started, there's one guy and he doesn't quite fit. He doesn't come out for a drink after work. He participate on Yammer, their social media tool. He's just not a team player, yeah? Well, it turns out they were engaged in a bit of similarity bias. And he was the only introvert out of 279 individuals in that company. The assumption was that extroversion is good for sales. That's why they hired people who were extroverted, right? It's people like them. He didn't fit because he had different preferences. His energy was depleted by engaging with people the whole day. He needed to go home and rest. But here's what was surprising. In the personality data, I compared it to every other metric that they had in the company, including revenue. He had the best revenue numbers of anybody in that company and the longest client retention. Yet extroversion can help with quick sales and quick connections. It's sometimes better to have introversion for long-term relationships, client relationships. So don't be quick to dismiss someone just because they don't fit. Learn why, and then see how they can help you change your behaviors. If you're seeking to increase sales and revenue, consider this. 60% of sales teams surveyed attributed increased sales to having a diverse and inclusive sales force. Diverse sales teams had 45% more growth in market share. So enhance your decision making by disrupting your thinking. Don't make the same assumptions that you've always made. Look at the data and test your assumptions. And finally, founded in 2000, Mobile Expense created a flexible, globally compliant expense management tool that works across different currencies and financial regulations. Their globally diverse team includes 27 different nationalities, 46% female representation on the team, software developers from multiple countries, an in-house financial compliance team, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Their app has been downloaded 1.7 million times. They process over 1.9 billion in annual travel expenses, and their expense app saves controllers 65% of time on their processes. But what really sets them apart is their partner landscape. They integrate with the best in the business and complement the offering. Financial innovation is moving to ecosystems, and all stakeholders make up that entire ecosystem. All stakeholders include every level of diversity that we have discussed today. I've given you a lot of information, so let me leave you with this last thought. To build a company, increase profitability, beat the competition, influence success, it takes a lot of ingredients, working together, collaborating, and aiming for the same strategic goal. And that means social leadership to unlock inclusive innovation. Create a portfolio of talent, and then invest in them. An engaged, diverse workforce led by social leaders serving customers globally, that's how you build business success. And to the new talent out there, think about going into finance, because rest assured, we know we need you. We need your ideas, we need your perspective, and we need you to innovate. So every time we all advocate for, interact with, and talk about diversity in finance, we educate the public on the power of representation. So be a voice for diversity. Be where your employees and potential clients are. Leverage every perspective, every voice, because in the end, every voice matters. Thank you for your time and attention. Hi, Chris.
Wow, that was incredible. I don't know about you all, but I am so inspired. Where do I sign up for?
You might need to slow down the speed at some point, but yeah, you can.
That was like the storytelling, the pieces. I don't know. I think if you don't get like 100 new emails in your inbox, like where do I sign up?
I'm on LinkedIn. Go for it.
I would definitely connect up there. That was incredible. I mean, we all know if we talk about inspiring leaders.
Yeah.
I've been in my career, if you go back, we've all been there. We've had some some maybe not the best leaders and so forth. But if we turn it and look at maybe some inspirational leaders.
Yeah.
What are some of the leaders that have inspired you?
I mean, one always jumps to mind, to be honest, as soon as I hear that question. People often ask that question. And his name is Daniele Farnaccia, so shout out to him. Mm-hmm. He understood before I even knew that you have to treat every individual like an individual. There is no blanket response to every person. You can't do the same thing for everyone. Pizza Fridays does not work for everyone, right? So he knew that right off the bat, and he'd have an open door policy for people who needed to ask questions all the time. But if you needed autonomy, he gave you the goal and he let you run with it, right? There were two questions, actually, Chris, and they're the ones that stay with me. He'd always ask himself, did my team succeed?
Sure.
Because I succeed if my team succeeds, and we did. We won awards, internal and external. The second was, and this is an interesting one, is do they want to work for me again? Because the fact is that we can often hit those metrics and hit those performance measures, but if your team doesn't want to work for you again, then you failed. Like, you will not get that kind of talent coming along with you on the journey. When you have great leaders, you want to follow them. You want to go where they're going. They'll call you and they'll say, do you want to work for me again? And you're like, yeah, let's do this, right? So He was great. He was fantastic.
I mean, I like that saying, you talk the talk, but you have to be able to walk the walk. And that kind of goes with a lot of sayings. I mean, if we look at some of the, like in your opinion, what are some of the qualities that are essential for like a leader? And we talk about driving diversification, and especially when it comes to the tech industry. What are your thoughts there?
I mean, honestly, this is going to sound really awful, but tech industry is no different than every other industry. It moves a bit faster, but in the end, if a leader doesn't have self-awareness and doesn't know their own working styles and what they need, then it can be disruptive to the rest of the team. So you got to kind of know yourself first. You got to have self-awareness, and you've got to be able to, understand when you need a break and when you need, a certain style of communication, and then understand your individuals on the team. I mean, there's one thing that, we talk about inspiring and giving purpose, and that's true, but trust comes from transparency, right? So during our financial crisis, I was working actually in one of the banks in Canada, and the leadership team had meeting for every floor at 9 o'clock every day. And even if they had nothing to share, they told us they have nothing to share. So they kept us in the loop. They were completely transparent about what was going on. Look, we don't know, but here's what we do know, you know? And that creates trust. Every employee during that crisis that was in this bank that I worked for bought shares in the bank when it went down because they believed in their leadership team. So when you ask me, like, you know, what can you do as a leader? Diversity starts with understanding yourself and then be transparent to build trust. Yeah.
I mean, you had that great slide with the boat. And like, you know, you got to be ready to be able to, and otherwise people are just going to jump ship. If we talk about, let's move over to kind of leadership strategies. And what have you found has been the most effective in bringing the best when it comes to diverse teams?
I mean, it's all about inclusion principles, isn't it? I mean, there's a few different things that I've used and I've instructed other people to use, and that's like things like failure sharing, right?
Sure.
We talk right now, Gen Z knows about failures, right? Because I think the cultural acceptance of failure is much higher than it was back when I was coming up, right? But they don't actually think about how much the older generation has to give them. So if you do failure sharing, you actually level the playing field for everybody because everybody has to share something that they've learned. So therefore, people are more likely to collaborate. It's like the stand-up meeting that I discussed earlier. You know, if you let people talk, I'll give you an example, Chris. I had a lead who thought he was being diverse and that he was like bringing everybody in, and he called an all-hands meeting, and I thought, great, we need an all-hands meeting. Let's talk about the challenges. Let's talk about solutions. Let's do it together, right? He talked for 2 hours straight. Nobody else said a word. I'm like, how is this an all-hands meeting? I don't understand what's happening here. But that's the problem, right? Is that we need to almost step back a little as leaders.
Yeah.
We need to create the environment, inclusive environment where people can talk, and then step back a little and let them do the solutioning and trust each other, learn to trust each other as well. So yeah, there's a few strategies. Personality workshops, obviously. One I love is start with why workshops, because then you get one purpose statement that the entire team can get behind. So yeah. There's a few different strategies. Maybe we don't have time to go into all of them.
But I think like the active listening is so important. It's so easy to
Absolutely.
get like caught up in your messaging and maybe take a step back. And I really agree with you there. You mentioned an interesting topic, and especially one group, when we're talking about the Gen Z group. People often categorize them as maybe being lazy. I really don't like to pull everyone over to one side, but what do you think talk about impact of adding more individuals when it comes to like Gen Z professionals to your team?
Okay, so I'm going to address two things there. So one is anyone can be lazy in a role if they're not motivated, engaged, listened to. You know, we're all human beings. We all want to feel like we're valued in some way, right?
Yeah.
So I think that Gen Zers just have a different perspective, because when Gen X was coming up, we didn't have the transparency we have now. We didn't have Glassdoor to tell us which company to work for or anything. We only had stay at your job because that's your job, right?
Yeah.
So even if we didn't feel engaged, we'd stay there. Gen Z can jump ship a lot faster. They know what's out there.
Yeah.
There's more transparency than ever before, right? And then to the actual question of, do we need them on the teams or what impact can they have? Let's be honest. Who are we designing solutions and products for if not the next generations? And if they're not in the room, how are you possibly creating a product that they're going to use, right? I mean, and I think the last thing I will say on that is that this goes for Gen Zers too, is that we got to respect everybody's contribution. Yeah. The older generation that's in the company have industry and company knowledge that the Gen Zers are never going to have, right? And the Gen Zers have knowledge on technology and trends that the older generation's never going to have. Yeah. And if we remove the fear that somebody's taking our job or, you know, that we're getting pushed out or whatever the case is, and like you said, listen to each other. You've both got so much to share, so much value to share, right?
1,000%.
Yeah, so there you go.
Raj, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you for sharing all your wisdom, your insights, and your great storytelling.
Thank you
so much.
All right. Enjoy the rest of the conference.
Thank you. Well, everyone, I hope you thought that was a delight. I absolutely did. Here we go. Next on the agenda, we're learning from billion-dollar projects how to stay in control of big numbers. This panel is joined by Jorden and Rolf. Jorden knows one thing or two about keeping projects on track and processes running smoothly. He's a co-founder of Bold Advice, a consultancy business helping companies in aviation, maritime, and energy become more efficient. Jordan's going to be sharing lots of practical tips on how you can optimize your processes and keep your projects under control. Definitely one you want to watch if you're particularly interested about process improvement. Jorden is joined by Rolf, who will be interviewing him, and he's the CEO of Mobile Expense. And a really little fun fact, actually, is before he got into marketing, he built an expense management solution, which actually got replaced by Mobile Expense. Gentlemen, take it away. We're so excited to have you.
Good morning, Jorden. Thank you for joining me here.
Thank you so much.
We're going to dive into some different topics. We're going to talk about cost control, risk management, budgeting, big projects, big numbers. But first, what is Bold Advice and what brought you into this role?
So Bold Advice is a consultant company, and we do project controls for mainly big construction companies. We've been around for 2.5 years right now. And we do everything from scheduling, risk management on projects to actual cost control. And we have a lot of enthusiastic consultants that will gladly take give any advice.
Well, awesome. So let's start with a project, right? You do project control. At what moment are you introduced to a project? Is it always in the same moment, in the same phase, or is it before the budget is already created, or is it after?
It's never the same moment, never in the same phase. Ideally, at the start of a project idea, we want to be involved. Sadly, that never really happens. It only in some occasions you're at the very beginning, you have a say in the budget and that sort of stuff. But it's also very likely that you're on a project that is already going on for 1.5 years. This is the budget. We've already spent 75% of it. Make it happen that we're finishing on time and within the budget. Good luck. That happens.
So what do you do? If you didn't create the budget, you inherit a budget that's so far into the project. How do you make sense of where you are in that stage?
So one project I had this exact situation. And the team was not really, they didn't know if they were going to finish on budget, and they had no real overview. And what I typically do in that situation is just go back to the start. And that's a tedious process of just, okay, so this is my budget, and let's figure out what we actually spend. And that entails a lot of diving in paperwork. What's my actual contract? Okay, we got a contract here, so we spent that money. How much did we spend on that contract? How many changes do we have? And just make sure that you build a cost report that is solid, that you can trust, that your project manager trusts, that your client will trust. And at that point, you have a moment in time, hey, this is where we are right now. What do we need to get done to get to that point that we're finishing this project? How much money do we need? How much can we value engineer? It's a process. It's a fun process, though.
You mentioned paperwork there. Are we talking about real paperwork, or is it digital paper?
Oh, sometimes it's actual paperwork.
Tell me, give me an example.
So I'm not going to name clients or anything, but it did happen that we had a side office, and in its side office, the project was already going on for a couple of years, and the company had a statement that you needed actual paper for an invoice. You need the printed out invoice that needed to be signed by actual people with a wet signature. And it needed to be saved for at least 5 to 10 years. So that's a container full of paperwork. And
Container?
Yes. Yeah, one of those large shipping containers full of paper.
So what do you do then?
Sit down, brew a pot of coffee, and just go through the paperwork.
And when is the moment that you think, okay, this is a project that I accept also? Because this, I'm going to assume this is an extreme example.
Yes.
But there is a moment that you decide, okay, this is a project that I can support. But maybe on the other side of this question is also the question, does it ever happen that you uncover something and that you say, okay, I'm not going to do this project. You need to find someone else for this.
I never had that. So typically when a client asks me for help, I'll just do my best to help that client and provide the insight that they need for that. And it could be your project is going to be way over budget. At this rate, we're going to spend all the money, or everything has been spent. That's valid information that they need for those projects. nobody has any benefit of me saying to a client, this is going to be fine. No, really, we're going to be fine. This is going to be okay. And then keep saying that mantra for months and months and months until it's too late. I'd rather go right down to the beginning. It's like, at this rate, we're not going to make it. We can do this, that, or whatever. And then you'll be fine. Or you need to scratch this part of the scope because we can't pay for it.
And who decides if you are allowed to go over budget and what that increase can be?
So what I like about project controls is we're an advisory position. So I advise my project manager to take a sort of action, and the project manager decides if he wants to go with that advice or not. And ultimately, it's communication. You want to talk to your project manager, to estimators, to your client, and just sit them down and talk numbers. Yeah. This is what is happening. My advice would be this, but ultimately, client decides.
So, you accept a new project. You did the budgeting, or you're in the budgeting phase.
Right.
What, if we talk about risk management, what kind of process do you go through to analyze what the risks are for a project that you're about to embark on?
Well, ideally, you want to have a risk session. You can do a risk session on scheduling, but we're talking numbers right now. So you want to have your project manager in the room. You want to have a project controller like me in the room. But also estimating is very, it's one of the most important things. Let's say you want to build a new hangar or anything. You want to have somebody that knows actual prices, but also can do a forecast on what those prices are going to be in a couple of years. Because we're talking projects that will take up to 5-7 years. Steel pricing can change drastically. We had one of my projects, we had a awning that needed to be built, and it was an awning worth 25K at the estimating stage. So that was in our budget. We valued engineered that awning out. Building has been built. The end client wanted to have that awning back. Steel prices changed. So that same awning that was 25K suddenly cost 250K.
How do you take that into account in the budget?
Yeah. So you always have contingency in your budget. So ideally you want to have roughly 10% contingency on your overall budget. And you cover those expenses. And in this case, we're already at the end of our project. So you know what's left. So basically this is a situation that you can just decide, hey, you really need that. All right, so we got a list of day 2 items with stuff you ideally want. This is the amount of money that we have. You choose your priorities. And let's talk about those priorities. And do you really need this? Because the building is already operational at that stage. But yeah, if from an estimating perspective, that's a horrible situation.
And are you the only one owning the budget? Or is it a shared, are there other external project controllers also involved sometimes, or always?
It depends on what the role of you as a project controller is. You can work as an owner's representation. If you're the owner's representation, you're super close to the budget. But you always have a finance department that is overall responsible for the finances of that company. So as a project controller, you're just managing that part, that small part of the budget.
So what happens then if there's another piece of the project that is happening simultaneously, and there's another project controller there, and he's pushing forward an invoice to you because he says, you know, this is not within my scope, it's in your scope, and so you think the same, you know, what happens then?
Yeah, this happens. At some projects, you see that part of that scope is set to a different department, but I had situations that I'm responsible for the overall budget. However, parts of those budgets are for different departments. And it does happen that I get an invoice through a system that is for something that is completely not mine. So the thing what you always need to do is be super aware of what your scope in the project is. What is your part? So if part of my scope is the overall part and everything technology-wise, digital technology, cameras and IP cables and all the good stuff is not mine, and I see an invoice coming through for just that, ask questions. Just ask questions to your project manager, to the project manager that handles that side of the scope. Have meetings with people. Just interact. Don't just sit down at your computer and accepting invoices or declining invoices.
So what happens? I can imagine you see many invoices
Yes.
on a daily basis. There's probably also some invoices that raise an eyebrow and that, you want to know, why are you putting this on the project?
Yeah.
What happens then, and if there's intentional actions and maybe unintentionally that someone thinks this belongs to the project, this belongs within the scope of this piece of the project, but there's also the intentional, we can call it fraudulous, but there's also the intentional invoice that they definitely know it's not part of it.
Yeah.
You're an external hired by by your client, of course. So how do you handle that if the client says, approve it, it's okay, but you don't think it's okay?
So that's always a tricky situation. If something really feels fraudulent, if you get an invoice that has 16 Rolexes on it, don't sign.
That sounds like one too many Rolexes.
Just don't sign. If there's weird,
what do they say if you ask them?
Luckily, I never had that situation though.
Okay.
But so let's say there's power tools on the invoice. There's iPads, computers, that sort of stuff. I would always openly first ask the questions, right? Ask questions to the contractor that's sending your invoice. Hey, why is this connected to the project? And according to the rules and regulations that we have, you're either allowed to do this or you're not allowed to do it. Why you're doing it is going to be part of the company after this project is finished. And then take your findings and talk to your client and to your project managers. Okay, this is what they're doing. Be aware of this fact. Are you okay with this or not? If the client ultimately is okay with it, they're the ones that are paying for the project. As long as it's not fraudulent and your signature is the only signature that's on it, I would say defer from signing. If the client is okay with certain expenses to be paid, sure, that's out of your control.
I know that you have international experience here, working in Europe, working in the US. Yeah. Is there any specific differences that you notice in the way that projects are being handled, the way that budgets are handled?
Oh yeah, for sure. One of the there's always cultural differences that you need to take in account. So I am a very blunt person. I will not hesitate to say no to somebody. And at first in the US, I did that as well. Like, that's not what we're doing. Oh, and I got hit with that. There's a lot of people that don't like that. So in the US, at least some parts of the US, there's you just need to do what we're asking you to do. And that can be difficult, but you can still do your job properly while doing what they're asking to do.
Let's move to the billion-dollar project topic.
All right.
Right. I'm going to assume that not all of your projects are billion-dollar projects. So talk me through a billion-dollar project. Does it scare you at all? I mean, it's such a big number.
At the beginning of my career, that was scary because those are large numbers. But once you are actually participating in a project like that, you're not alone. There's no way, there's some people are responsible for that billion-dollar project, but typically the project controller is not one of them. The one fun part about those massive projects and programs is you're with a team of project controllers. You have peers that you can ask questions to, and that's one thing that I always like to advocate for is talk to each other, communicate. I ask everybody, hey, is this still good what we're doing? I think that this is the best solution, but do you think that this is the best solution? That's what I like about the bigger projects. But the type of work that you're actually doing is not that different from the smaller projects. And a big project for some companies, or small project for some companies is a very big project for other companies. So I always like to go open-ended to those meetings.
Exactly. Yeah. What's the small type of projects that you do? Just to get a bit of a comparison.
The smallest that I did, I think the smallest project that I did was as a project controller, but it was roughly 800K, something like that.
Okay.
And that's exchanging a pipeline in a petrochemical plant.
So what's the difference? What's the similarities between an 800K project that you control and a billion euro one?
I would say similarities. Still, you need to do your job excellent. There's still going to be errors in invoices. You still need to calculate if everything is being done correctly. It's all human work typically, so errors can arise. Do your due diligence. That's a very slow word. Let's blame that on the internet connection.
I think this is a good bridge to a change management, people management question also. Big numbers. How do you make sure that other people involved in the project, the people spending the money basically, you approve it, but there's other people that get the invoice, of course. How do you ensure that they act in a similar way that you do, that they care about these numbers?
And so we're talking about contractors sending me the invoice, right?
Yes.
What I always like to do on my projects is sit down with that contractor and with their invoicing team, which is typically, you got a construction manager on that side, you got estimators, you got a project controls person as well, and finance and a project manager. And I like to sit down in a meeting and just show them what I mean, what I need for an invoice. What I really like for typical invoices is have everything be organized in there. This is the topic, this is what you're invoicing, this is your contract value, this is your current contract status, this is what you previously invoiced. Then the follow-up page, a breakdown of what you're invoicing. I really like people sending me invoices for $2.5 million on just a piece of paper, but I need a little bit more information. It's a lot of money. It's not on my bank account. I want to know why you're invoicing me that amount, instead of, I got very nice blue eyes, here's an invoice for $2.5 million.
So in a sense, it doesn't matter what the size of the invoice is.
Not at all.
Does it matter in a more physical sense what the size of the invoice is? I can imagine you get invoices that are a single page and some that are a bit longer.
It shouldn't. It's not your money, but it's still real money. There's actually a transaction. There's people's mortgages depending on that money, however small, however big it may be. So that's why I always want to check if everything is correct, because it's just real money. I don't mind if it's $1,000 invoice or a $10 million invoice. Those numbers just need to be real, and that's why I check and vet and do my due diligence.
So how do you? There's probably a lot of finance managers in the audience as well, and when you hire people for your own company, you want to know that they behave in that way as well, right? You want to know. You cannot control everything that they do always.
No.
You need to be able to trust them. How do you make sure that you hire the right person for this?
That's a very difficult question, but one of the keywords that you mentioned is trust. And that's a gut feeling that you have when talking to somebody that we can trust this person to handle finances. I always like people being honest. I rather have somebody be honest to me and say, I don't know this, can you please explain it? And then use that information instead of somebody that is bluffing their way through, because that always, we always know, especially with years of experience in your career, you will pick out the people that try to finagle their way out of it.
Yeah, exactly. I'm gonna ask a very dumb question. Does the money that you deal with, does it ever feel like monopoly money?
It shouldn't. It shouldn't. I can understand that people feel that way. Because you get blindsided by large numbers. But it's all large. Oh, it's only 50K that we're missing here, and it's not only 50K you're missing. That's proper money that can be used somewhere else, and that's money that you can use to hire somebody else to help grow the company, for example. And that's the mindset I always try to have when working on my projects.
Is it difficult to keep that mindset?
I don't think so. As long as you keep, that's a difficult question. I don't think it's difficult. It comes with a sort of quality that you bring to your job. That's something that you just do. That needs to be part of you. Yeah.
Let's talk a little bit about technology.
Okay.
When do you think technology plays a part in the work that you do? Does it play a part at all?
It does. And you see technology becoming more of a thing with the past year. So years ago, invoices needed to be signed with a wet signature for some companies. You see right now that digitalized. So first, companies like DocuSign got real into to replace that signature. And right now you slowly see invoicing systems coming in place that you need to upload your invoice into. And that can be really helpful. But to make the change, especially in large companies, is always difficult.
Do you think there's a risk that people become too dependent on technology?
There's always a risk. Yeah, I would always, but that's just me, and maybe I'm going to be phased out eventually by technology, but there always should be a human check in there, just a sanity check.
And Mobile Expense is an expense management company, of course. So what about in those projects that you do? There's a definite difference between invoicing invoices and handling expenses. Is it part of the project?
It's typically a very large part, especially in construction projects on that side. You get a lot of expenses from your contractors.
And what kind of expenses?
So those vary from Uber rides to from the client office to your own office, dinners, but also for general contractors, power tools, and everything that they can try to muster up. We've seen a lot on those things. So those invoices can be really large in backup. I had invoices with 150 pages of backup and expenses, and not all of them are large backup numbers.
Okay, but let's dive into that. 150 pages,
Yeah.
right? You have to check it line by line.
Yes.
I can imagine that sometimes people put something in there that's a little bit vague.
We had fun stuff.
Can you share one fun stuff?
Humidifiers. Humidifiers are invoices that the clearly personal stuff that's on there. Apart from the various dinner parties that we have, we had iPads, we had power tools, TVs, all stuff that you normally don't really see on a construction site.
I can imagine that a power tool that they use it for the project.
Yes.
So why is that a problem that they expense?
Well, okay, the thing about that is who owns the power tool, right? If that tool, if that drill is going to stay for the client, sure, expense it because it's a client property right now. But that's typically not the case. So people expense it. I think one of the fun parts was I had a car being monthly reimbursed on a project. That was a weird one. So I had the monthly finance payments were somewhere in that invoice.
What was the reasoning for them to?
They needed to drive to site.
Okay.
That was the reasoning, and this was in a case that I was late on a project. So there's not really a lot you can do about it unless, but just slowly making sure that fades out of the contract. But yeah, that's weird stuff.
Yeah, if the previous project controller approved something,
Yeah, or
can you cannot change that? I
no,
imagine.
so that's so it sets a precedent basically for future invoices, and that's why I sit down with my contractors just to explain really well what I expect them to send me. And the first 6 months typically is a lot of declining invoices, and this is not up to agreement. This needs to be different, and if you do that constantly, then slowly you start to notice how you want to work together, and then it becomes easier. And then it becomes easier for me to check that invoice as well.
Does it happen that you have a couple of conversations with a supplier but that you don't feel that there's really a trust that you can have in the supplier. What do you do then?
That's no trust in your supplier is very difficult, especially once you're far into a project. In some cases, sometimes you have a supplier that's untrustworthy, that's trying to finagle your way to just get more into the contract, ump their changes with a lot of stuff that, you're delaying 2 months though. We need a lot more personnel to pay for that. And at that point, your hands are basically tied. So at the beginning, really try to vet your contractors. Don't just go blindly for the lowest bidder. Go for previous work that was good, non-blacklisted contractors, etc.
How many contractors do you generally deal with? With some of the bigger projects also?
So it depends. You can have anywhere from 4 contractors on a smaller job to 30, 40 contractors at the same time for the bigger jobs.
And you have one-on-one conversations with all of them to make sure that they follow your rules.
I try to put it like that. So you got your big ticket item. So you always have a general contractor, which is typically around 60-70% of your budget. So you really want to nail that one down because that's your big ticket item. Architect, same story. That's a lot of work. And then you got your smaller contractors, and that varies because those typically invoice either 1 or 2 invoices their complete contract amount. So that's easier.
So I want to change gears a little bit. I have a couple of hot takes here.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, you can only say yes or no, and if it's really burning in your soul, then
it will.
You can say a little bit more about it. Yes or no?
Sure.
Most financial risks in projects are predictable and preventable.
Yes. Everything's going to burn. Yes.
Yes or no? Fraud is an inevitable risk in project financial management.
I want to say no.
Why?
You should always be able to prevent fraud. That's the human take. You should vet everything. You should. Yeah, no, that one goes dear to me.
Yes or no? Finance professionals are becoming too dependent on automated tools.
Not yet. No, not yet.
Yes or no? Leadership involvement has minimal impact on the financial success of projects.
No.
How is leadership at some of those firms that you work with involved?
So leadership is ultimately responsible for the budget. We just tell the story to them. It's like this is what you're getting. If you choose this is most likely going to be the outcome. You tell us how to proceed. They're the final signature.
Yes or no? Technology solutions have replaced the need for skilled financial professionals in project management.
Luckily, not yet.
Do you expect it will change?
Somewhere down the line, it will. I no doubt about it. But the roles of financial controllers are is just going to change.
Okay, last one.
All right.
Yes or no? Financial controls are often bypassed to meet project deadlines.
No.
Last question. What kind of advice do you have to people that are interested in this industry and working in a financial job like you're doing?
If you start working in a financial job like this, is don't be scared to ask questions. If you don't know something, don't spend hours and then to try to figure it out on your own. Try to read the various websites that's around. There's people with skills around you. Just ask the questions. That's okay. Everybody likes to talk. Just be human and communicate.
Thank you, Jorden.
Thank you so much.
That was a really interesting session. One of the things that I really picked up was no matter the size of the project, no matter if it's $1 billion project or a very small one, it's the same effort and the same professionalism. Up next, the trends in corporate finance, the expense management to smart spending. This panel is joined by David Parker and Bas Janssen. David's a fintech expert with a ton of knowledge about payments and expense management. As a founder of Pelamuth Consulting, he advises in some of the biggest names in the industry. He also is involved in open banking in the UK. So if you're curious about fintech, I would really much be really interested. You're going to be leaning into this as well as you possibly can. David will be interviewed by Bas. Bas is the go-to guy when it comes to all things of innovation at Mobile Expense and the founder of Declaré. From leading initiatives like credit cards, CO2 reporting, Bas is helping shape the future of finance. Gentlemen, the floor is yours.
Well, welcome. Although I said I'm going to be interviewing you, I think it's actually going to be more of a conversation this week, or a debate, shall we say, between us. We've got some views I know we don't 100% agree on, so we'll take it from there. And, we'll have a conversation, but ask your questions for the audience as well, and I'm sure we'll get them fed in as well. So, where are we going to start off?
Well, David, we're going to discuss the trends that we see in business finance and corporate finance, if you will. And I wanted to start off by asking you, as a judge, for example, on several different awards, for example, the Pay 360 Awards, Open Banking Awards, International Loyalty Awards. What is the things that you see? What is the best practices that you see or innovations that you see coming around in the market today?
I'll tell you what. Let's go broader. I think post-COVID, the European market as a whole is actually relatively buoyant. And what that means is we're seeing people are doing their best to attract workers. And I think we're seeing a change in how people and companies relate to employee expenses. And what I mean by that is, if we go back 5-10 years ago, doing an expense claim was a pain. And now it's got to the point where companies and people going to work for companies are almost saying, if I'm going to go and work there, I want my life easy. Don't make my life hard. So it's almost like HR is saying to the finance team, hey guys, don't make these guys' lives hassle. We want to employ them. So they've got to actually almost be thinking, like they think of customer experience, they're thinking almost of the employee experience, making their lives easy to work there, and part of that is running the expenses and enabling them not to spend their own money and stuff like that. So I think there's a big change in how you use expenses as a tool to help attract staff and keep staff. I also think the second one, it sort of ties into this, is that FDs these days, they hear a lot about big data and all this stuff, and there's lots of acronyms thrown around the place. But I think it's being able to say, well, if we spent this in the last 3 months, I've got a budget of this. What's my predictive? Where am I going? If I know what I spent last year, can I use that to help me understand my budgets for next year? So I think expenses, other than it used to be a black hole where you just put a number there. I think we're using the data and the analytics to help predict things in the future.
So really visibility on data is something that's really necessary today.
Visibility of data, but also by using that data. You always had visibility of it, but you could never use it. Now you can actually start using it for the future. And I think that's a big thing. But hey, we talked about a couple of key trends, didn't we, beforehand? So I know we were going to go through those. But before we do that, can you just tell me a little bit about the mobile expense journey or the history? Because I think that'd be useful for the audience.
Sure, David. And it actually ties into the trends that you see, because mobile expense is actually already 24 years old. So it was founded in the year 2000 with the name Mobile Expense, which Thibaud already explained today is actually interesting, because back then nobody had a mobile phone in his pocket, or at least not a smartphone.
We had the old Nokias. Come on, the old Nokia bricks. I had one of them. I'm old enough. No hair.
Very strong phones back then, indeed. But Declaré, the company that I founded, was actually only founded in 2014, and there was a little different approach to it, because while Mobile Expense was founded with the idea to help enterprise clients have a compliant expense process in many countries in the world, we founded Declaré with the conception of the employee, to servicing the employee. Why can I not make a picture of my receipt when I have a mobile phone in my pocket? So really the drive for the support of the employee was the foundation of Declaré. Then in 2019 we merged with Mobile Expense, which is great actually, because now we have the combination of the innovation and the UX for employees combined with international compliance. So I think that's a great journey that we've been in so far. And then of course, like you said, COVID happened. And we've seen a lot of changes because of COVID. First of all, travel has changed. But also I think the nature of expense management has changed a lot as well.
Travel has changed? It's an interesting statement that why people travel less, more.
Well, of course, because of COVID, there was a lot less travel suddenly, and then in a very short time frame, companies got used to using Teams and other digital tools to have meetings online. We do see that travel has picked up a lot since COVID, but we also see that companies approach travel differently. For example, instead of only focusing on servicing their employees with hotels and planes and trains, companies also are thinking about how do I service my employees with mobility solutions and things like that. And also I believe that travel solutions have picked up a lot of innovations for, I think, duty of care is something that's really important nowadays. If there's going to be a next pandemic, we have to be prepared, of course. So I think overall there's a lot of changes in the industry that we've seen.
Okay. Let's talk about some of these trends now, because I think together we managed to identify 6 key trends that we're going to cover off here. And I'm going to kick off by really talking about something that's probably in some ways the hottest 2 letters out there, AI. I don't think you get any hotter than that. AI spend management, and it's certainly one of the key things out there. And I'm just wondering how you see this changing. I mean, I probably talked a little bit about the predictive analysis, but how do you see this changing the landscape of expense management out there? Because I think it's got a big impact.
I think you're right, David. So we've been using AI for a long time already, but that was essentially rule-based AI, and we are using AI nowadays really to capture data from invoices and from receipts to really understand everything what's on the receipt, from the VAT to the line items to to currency, etc. But I think now with AI, with large language models, there's much more possible in expense management. You can think about, for example, let's say a company has a expense policy of 80 pages long. Do you want to program all those different policies as functional business rules into a solution? Or could you use a large language model to automatically capture expenses that are not compliant with the policy and flag those, for example, to the FD? Not making the decision for the FD, but ensuring that the FD knows where to focus, which expenses are outliers, which expenses are outside normal behavior, if you will.
I just want to pick up on that point, if I may, because I like this idea. So expenses are coming in. In the old days, you might do an audit once a month on X number of employees just to check, because you're never going to go through line item on every single expense. Now you're saying the systems can do all that for you and just flag the ones that might be outside the policy. So actually, you're not only reducing your time, you're getting time used where it's created the greatest value, which is actually in making the decision, not finding the points to be made a decision on. Is that fair?
I think you're right. So I think there's a couple of different use cases or user roles, if you will, where these new AI functions can really be of play. So the employee, of course, has to ensure that the employee knows what can I spend, to extract the data when he spends, to automatically match invoices and receipts to credit card transactions, for example. This is something that these intelligent tools can do. Also, indeed, flagging expenses, checking against the policy, all those things is really helping the employee. Like it's an assistant for the employee, if you will. Then for managers want to know, indeed, are these expenses according to the budget? Is it booked on the correct project, etc. So this is also where AI can come into play to really help managers understand, can I approve this or not?
I like the idea that you just said then of the assistant, because I always think of the big bosses always have the executive assistant that manages all their expenses. Now you're saying effectively every employee can have their own executive assistant.
I think so. If I see the trends now, if I see the trend with AI, I really think that it's more of an assistant than a decision maker. Yeah, indeed.
Okay, let's move on to the second one. Real-time payment solutions. How do you see, I suppose, the cards playing into that financial control? Because I think that's a key word. And the employee empowerment. I'm going to come back to my HR side of it again, which is giving, employees these days want to feel empowered. And I just wondered how you see that all coming together.
Yeah, I agree with employees wanting to be empowered. And we've had the experience with a mobile expense for 2 decades now already, with companies using credit cards. So traditionally, credit cards are not real time, and there's not many controls that you have around credit cards. And I think that companies would give some employees a credit card, typically the happy few, probably the management and some heavy travelers. But nowadays, with all the innovation that we've seen in banking and finance and fintech, it is possible to give employees a payment facility, being a credit card, if you will, with the grip and control for the company to actually manage all that. And now with Apple Pay and Google Pay and virtual cards coming into play, I think companies have the means to actually provide employees with that payment facility while still keeping that control and making sure that budgets are not overrun.
Okay, but I think a lot of companies, bigger companies, are going to say, I don't want my receptionist having the same credit limit as my top sales guy on the road. So control is great at the FD level in terms of one thing, but you're saying to me he can actually control on a card base. I think it's quite important when you're talking about control, because I know some markets particularly are quite nervous about giving too much to their employees as much as they want to empower them.
Yes, I fully agree. So I think that companies want to have the flexibility indeed to decide who can I give what kind of payment facility, who gets a credit card to travel internationally, and who gets a credit card, for example, to do office groceries, if you will, or to buy printing paper. And I think with modern solutions, this is actually possible. So you can set up different limits, for example, for cards, right? And employees can request a new card if they want, and then they can ask indeed for a specific budget, for a specific purpose, and then as a company.
So can I have event cards, or can the marketing team, for instance, have one card for my social media, but a different card for spending for other stuff, so they can keep things nominally ledger separate?
Well, exactly. This is what you can do with these innovations nowadays. So, for example, an employee that is traveling a lot, he can just have a normal plastic credit card that he has to use to check in hotels. Then you have the office manager that has a virtual card and pays for the office groceries. And then you have marketing that has maybe a different virtual card for each vendor, for Google, for Meta, for X, Twitter, right? So they have all these budgets under control and linked to a specific payment method. And then maybe when you have an event, then you need to buy something for the stand or the stand itself, then you can have a single-use credit card that you only use once for a specific payment, which is booked exactly against the right
so
ledger.
Cards can actually be done on a per card expenses can be not only controlled on a per card basis, but the limit, they actually be allocated to a specific event, like an event, so you can have an event card and manage it in that way as well.
Yeah, exactly. So nowadays it's possible to give employees the autonomy to spend wisely, while still as a company keeping spend under control.
That has moved forward then a long way. Okay, next hot thing probably out there is carbon counting. Now, we're finding listed companies, there's increasing national laws in some countries talking about how they got to keep track of things and everything else. And certainly there is a groundswell that many companies are wanting to understand better what their carbon footprint is out there. And, your expenses is a good proportion of what you're spending totally. Are you moving to do that? What are you seeing in that trend, and what are you seeing as the options on that, and how accurate is it?
Yeah, we really recognize this as a very important trend. We see indeed changing legislation, as you say. So in many different countries, there's legislation coming into play where companies have to report on their CO2, on their carbon emissions, on many different levels. So it's about their building, for example, and it's about the cars that they use, but it's about actually everything. We really see that legislation is coming into place first to get insights about the measurement, about the carbon emissions, before there's going to be like a reduction of carbon emissions. So one example is in the Netherlands, there's legislation now that has come into play in July this year, where every company with more than 100 employees, they need to report on their employee mobility carbon emissions. So this is of course a trend that we see in different countries.
So no, I'm just interested. So that they've particularly picked out mobility. I mean, it's not even just all their spend. So now you've actually got a subset of total expend you've got to report on. That makes it quite challenging for companies.
That is indeed challenging, and then mobility, I would say, is actually still easy, because if you know which car you drive and how far you drive, and you know the exhaust of the car, then it's an easy calculation. But what if companies want to report on all of their spend or all of the things that they do? They want to put a CO2 value to it. I really believe that CO2 might be the currency of the future in that sense. But let's say that you buy a pack of printing paper or you buy a cup of coffee. How much CO2 can you tie into that that spend? That's difficult. So we discussed before, we see many different carbon calculators coming to market that are trying to help companies and governments with this calculation. But it will, in my opinion, always be an approximation. But it all starts with the insights, and then we can move to reductions.
But can you get that insight from the data you're seeing and stuff? Do you get those insights? I suppose that's my first question as a company.
It's with different categories, there's different models to use. So right now, as I explained, for mobility, it's actually pretty straightforward. Still difficult, when you take the train and you want to know, you go from A to B, what is the exhaust of the train, or is it only an electrical train? So it depends on which model you use, what kind of outcome you get. But still, there's challenges, because if you make like a payment, then you don't get the CO2 value just with that. For example, if I go to the media market in the Netherlands, I can buy a fridge, or I can buy a pack of printing paper. So you don't know, because of the transaction, you don't know what the CO2 value is. So, but there's different tools in play now that you could use to actually approximate that value.
Okay, so it's coming. It's not there yet to the level of detail we'd hope.
What we see is that a lot of companies are intrinsically wanting to know their CO2 and their exhaust, and that's one trend. And the other trend is that governments and legislators are putting legislation.
So it's going in the right. It's a trend. It's a real trend.
It's a real trend, but it's definitely not there yet.
Okay, I want to move on from that a little bit, if that's all right, and talk about compliance, because expenses and compliance are sort of two words that go hand in hand. And I think one of the trends we're seeing is the demand for what I'm going to call real-time reporting. It always used to be that you put your expenses in, if I expend it on the 1st of February, the expense, by the 30th of February, or 28th of February, I've got to then, put my expenses claim in, and had to be in maybe by the 15th of the month. And then, it's all... I think there's a big change coming here in terms of what companies are looking for in terms of real time. I'd like to get your insights on that.
Yeah, well, I think your insights are very interesting here as well, because coming from open banking and all the innovations in fintech in the past couple of years, yes, I do believe that real-time data and real-time insights and real-time compliance is something that is possible today. So where companies used to have like monthly closures, and then they would see the expenses of the employee, and then you ask the employee, hey, what is this expense? Employee has no idea anymore. That was 2 or 3 months back. I think this is changing now. I think now if an employee spend something with his card, for example, then the next day you could also already have those insights inside your company and do something about it. What do you think about that?
Well, I'll tell you what I'm thinking is, I'm going back to the first point we talked about, AI. And I think this is where the real-time reporting and AI piece comes together. Because, as I sort of jokingly said, an employee spends on the 1st of Feb. 28th of Feb, he gets told to submit his expense form. It's in by the 15th of then March. Company doesn't even look at it till maybe the 25th of March. As you said, no memory. Now with AI, he spends it on the 1st of Feb. By the 2nd of Feb, he's got an email in his inbox because AI has flagged it to the boss and gone, I'm not sure this is compliant. The FD's gone, I think you're right. Emails go back out to the employee and says, you spent this money yesterday. Can you just confirm how this complies with, and the AI even tells him, this is the policy he's potentially in breach of. Ask him how he's meeting this policy.
Yeah. Or we're going to freeze your card.
Exactly. But the point is, I can remember what I did yesterday. I can't remember what I did 6 weeks ago.
Exactly. So how can you justify a spend that's months ago? Yeah.
Exactly. And I think this is, when we talk about real-time reporting, I think maybe what we should be talking about is real-time questioning, real-time compliance. It's not the reporting of the data that needs to be real-time. It's much more around the checking, flagging, and also, you can imagine an FD goes, I'm not sure that's compliant. If he's then got to work through a 20-page document trying to find which of their policies it's breached, that takes time. On the other hand, what AI can do now is say, see, policy 271 we think it's potentially breached that. And he can go, okay, go, policy 271, please justify why that's against it. The sales guy can come back and say, well, it was required because of these reasons, gets approved, no hassle. But to me, it's not the reporting, it's the real-time compliance that actually, again, makes the employee's life easier. I think that's
exactly.
the difference.
Yeah, I really believe we get more and more questions from companies that are looking into that real-time data, real-time insights, real-time controls, if you will.
Yeah, I think that's one of the key benefits this whole modern expense management platform brings is that level of control, but it's not negative control, it's positive control. It's making the employee's experience better. And I think that's a key change we're seeing from where we used to be in the old-fashioned days, with, when I was young doing expenses. Yeah, I've got less, I'm slightly older. But that sort of leads me into my next question of we're seeing a shift, I suppose, towards the office of the CFO in terms of spend management. Expenses becoming part of it.
That's the next trend we've recognized, indeed. A change towards what we would call, indeed, the office of the CFO, which is all about the convergence of spend. So that means CFOs have many different tools, and we see really a convergence of that. So where, like years ago, you would have a different solution for every little piece of process in your company, now we see really the convergence of that. So we see expense management, invoice management, accounts payable. We see companies that are looking for digitization solutions from everything from source to pay.
So it's digitization of the whole spend management, really.
Yeah. Yeah, that's exactly it, indeed. So there's of course in different countries there's different levels of digitization, but we see overall that the office of the CFO really is a trend where CFOs just want to have, well, essentially they just want to have like one dashboard where they can really see all the information, all the data, the insights, and use that to make management decisions.
Now you haven't mentioned one word there, which I've got to ask you about. Therefore, blockchain. It's been forecast for the last 20 years as being taking over the world, but do you see a role? If so, how, where, what? I mean, you haven't mentioned it, so I've got to ask.
I don't think blockchain is a trend right now. I think people have been talking about the blockchain for a long time already, but we don't see a lot of actual use cases in expense management still today. But still, I believe there's a lot to do there. I really believe that for example, with large invoices, and you want to track the source and all the steps that the product went through, or where it's coming from, where that's really important. I think blockchain can play a big role there. What do you think?
I think you've hit the nail on the head then. Anything, it needs to be proportionate. And blockchain, you could argue, is another step up of traceability. So I think what you're really saying here is where you've got more complex things or things with bigger invoices, it becomes part of that spend management where on invoices over X, you want to know the goods left the factory on this date, it's the same goods going in the container, same goods that are being invoiced, being shipped. I think that's where blockchain can come in, so that you know you're paying the right source all the way back. Yeah,
exactly. Does it make a lot of sense to have that if you buy a cup of coffee and add your receipt for it? But here it really comes into play.
I think it's proportionality almost, and I think you're right. It's not a trend, but it's a trend of something we may see coming in, if that makes sense.
Indeed.
So it's not its own trend, but a trend as part of spend management I could see coming in.
And I think the last trend that we recognize is really the convergence of finance and HR functions, where do you see that as well?
I think, right at the beginning, I talked about the user experience, and for many years, I think, employees were almost treated as second-class citizens. Companies believe that they got to treat their customers really well, and they could just do whatever they want to employees, basically. And I think the world has changed that. You talked about the duty of care and all that, and I think HR departments now these days are becoming very conscious of the need that actually, as much as their job is to find the right people, it's actually to keep the right people. And part of keeping the right people is making their lives better. Now, we've seen flexi working coming in. Of course, some companies still are coming back and saying, we want you in the office 5 days a week. I think they're in the minority. Most are moving to more of a flexible work-life balance type situation. it's one of those things when I see expenses and expense management being part of that. You know, it's all part of really make the HR department saying, yes, I know, Mr. Finance, you need to do certain things, but you need to do it in a manner that allows us to recruit, maintain, and keep the best employees. And that doesn't mean they're spending 3 hours every Friday afternoon sitting down doing expenses. So I think it's almost a pressure from HR saying to FD, you've got to get your act together to make our employees' lives better.
So like the expense process could almost be like a benefit for the employees if you organize it well.
That's an interesting point. That is a really interesting point. We have, you know, sometimes companies do say as a benefit, we have a policy to where employees have been paying out expenses, we pay them at a certain time. I think expense management can actually become an employee benefit if it's done well, because you say we have we all know there are expense processes out there that literally would take a sales guy 3 hours every Friday afternoon filling in paperwork, basically. If you can now give him 3 hours back, that's selling time, that's time to make, you know, to do more productive things that becomes a benefit to the employee.
Yeah, I really agree. I really think COVID was a driver for it as well, because after COVID we saw, of course, a lot of home office coming into play, or employees traveling around the world, being able to work from everywhere. And I really think companies are looking at how can we service these employees with mobility, with benefits, with all kinds of things to make it easy for them to spend wisely, to spend autonomously, for example, but also keeping the control of that spend and what employees are doing. So I think these are the 6 trends now that we've covered. What I think is interesting is to ask also our audience which of these trends will have the most impact on their business. So
as long as they vote quickly.
If they vote quickly. So this is what I want to ask the audience. And don't forget, we are rewarding one of the voters with a nice goodie bag. So and you want to get this goodie bag, guys. So which of these trends do you think will have the most impact on your business? Is it AI-driven spend management, or is it the real-time payment solution that you believe will have the most impact, or carbon accounting and green finance?
Well, it might not have an impact on their business, that one, but it's the importance of it to their business.
Yeah, that's true indeed. Real-time reporting and compliance, or the convergence of spend, the office of the CFO? Or is it the convergence of finance and HR functions? Really seeing HR coming more into play with regards to spend management, organizing, mobility, etc., and home office for employees.
So
Please.
While they're voting now, we each have to pick one of these and what they think they're going to choose as having the biggest impact.
What do you think, David?
I have to say, it's very tempted to go with AI because of what I think it can do in terms of basically reducing the workload of the FD, you see. And I think, therefore, I really do, there's many things in there that can have a big impact, but if I'm looking at the FD, what's going to save me the greatest amount of time, what's going to make my life easy, but also make for an employee the experience best, I see this AI real time coming together. So it's almost a mixture between the AI and the real time. It's the real time compliance driven by AI, if that makes sense. So I'm going to cheat and I'm going to go for 1 and 2.
So David, can I ask you to like as a final question, how do you see like expense or spend management, if you will, evolve? Like what will it be in 10 to 15 years? How do you look at that?
Okay, imagine this. I'm home-based. A lot of people are these days. I drive to the railway station, and my company pays for the
parking of
the
car,
parking car, and I get on the train and I go in. Today, I've got to get out and pay for that car parking, using some silly app or something normally that never works, or it's a pain. It takes me ages putting in my car registration or clicking this. It's a nightmare. But hang on a minute. My car knows I'm at the railway station. My car knows I'm in the car park. Now, if it knows I'm in the car park, why can't it talk to the car parking app, whatever system, and go, hey, David's parked his car here. Can I pay for car parking, please? Of course you can. Now, the first time it does it, it might send me a push notification saying, do you want to pay for it? And there'll be a little tick box, don't ask this again. I tick that box and go, yes. Thereafter, every time I park my car, I get out the car and I walk to the train. What do I have? What I have, in my view, is the Uber of expense management. I get out, it's taken care of. surely expense management needs to move towards Uber of expense management. In other words, expenses are taken care of. That's it.
That's a beautiful idea. I hope we can get there, but we are trying to drive that change from within mobile expense. Is there any still questions that we need to do? No? Then thanks a lot, guys.
Oh, hey, I've just seen, the vote was for AI.
Oh,
so
really?
actually, people agree with me. We're going to get to the fact that I can park my car and someone else is going to work out where I've parked and sort it all out for me.
Now, let me talk to our CPO if we can make that happen, guys. Thanks a lot, David. Thanks a lot for your time and joining me today.
Well, that was a very interesting session. We talk about AI, and we now know what the big winner is. Imagine we all having some type of a wristband. AI is picking up that we've watched all these incredible speakers, and AI is now telling us that it's time for a little bit of a break. We need to fill up on a little bit of energy, have a quick drink, and maybe just stretch our legs a little bit more. In just a few minutes, we'll be joined by a really interesting panel, so I would really encourage you to wrap and really get back in time for 12:15. So I'll see you in a few minutes. Welcome back, everyone. I hope everyone's had a really good little break, had a chance to fill up on some coffee, a little bit of tea, maybe grab a bite to eat, and had a chance to maybe stretch your legs a little bit. This one I'm really excited about. We've got a really good panel discussion, and we're going to be talking about how we can automate travel and expenses. The corporate card advantage, and with Koen, we got Sofie, Christian, and Gijs. We've got a fantastic panel lined up with experts from Personio, Ugencia, and Expense Brain. They'll be diving in deep. You know, technology sometimes, guys, is not always on our side, but right now it is. So if we talk about this, the next session right now, we're talking about corporate cards back again and the top-tier travel and expense solutions that's changing the game. From simplifying processes to boosting compliance and employee satisfaction, this session is packed with insights how finance and technology can help you stay ahead of competition. Now, hope you guys are ready. Hope you guys are leaning in because this panel is going to be really good. So I'll be welcoming the panel, and let's get started.
Welcome everyone. Welcome to the panel discussion Automating Travel and Expense, the Corporate Card Advantage. My name is Sofie and I will be your host today, and I'm thrilled to introduce our speakers to you. We know each other for a long time as partners, of course, but for the people at home, I'm happy to introduce. So first we have Gijs Swaans. Commercial lead and global sales manager at Ugencia, a leading travel solution, and Gijs will bring a lot of knowledge on how to streamline travel management for companies. Next we have Koen Stamm, head of Benelux at Personio, a leading HR solution, and Gijs will bring his perspective on how to increase employee engagement and satisfaction. And finally, we're excited to announce Christian Elsasesser, managing partner from Expense Brain, and he has a deep expertise in integrating travel and expense solutions, and he can tell us all about how to be better compliant and also gain financial control. Throughout the sessions, we want to make it as engaging as possible, so I encourage you to put your comments or questions in the chat, and we will be answering those questions in the Q&A at the end. So let's dive in, guys. Welcome for coming to the studio. So I think the scene has been set, so we're going to talk about corporate cards. So when you think of business travel, corporate cards have always been around. Now, these days, thanks to digitization, but also innovation in payments, the idea of using corporate cards as a sole source of truth for expense data is becoming more and more normal. How would you say how this trend goes, and also when you look at, for example, more expense solutions offering their own corporate cards, what would be, in your opinion, the benefits, but also the challenges that come along with this offer? And yes, I will start with you.
Thank you. Cards, it's always been a thing, especially in travel, because it really depends on company policies, right? Many companies don't always find it good that their employees have a card because typically of misusage. So when we start deploying those cards for organizations, usually the big advantage here is that because travelers feel trusted, right? They have the card solution, they are going on the road, they don't need to do their own expenses, which usually saves a lot of hassle for them, right? Instead of expensing yourself. For myself, I've been in business travel this week. I have a corporate card. For me, it saves me a lot of time and hassle instead of expensing it myself with my personal card or making any other type of invoices I need to collect. So from that perspective, the big advantage here for travelers, it's user experience. Secondly, for my company, it streamlines the process of payment, meaning automatically the charges will be on my expense report, and that, of course, for me and for the company, gives them the right data to, apply the data, reconciliate, etc.
Okay, thank you, guys. So I take away streamlining data, and then user experience would be your main remarks there. Koen?
Yeah, I mean, for myself, also from the HR perspective, of course, I always like to see it from the employee perspective. Of course, myself, I'm also a traveler, but I think what is interesting to see in the market, whether it is HR, whether it is finance, whether it is travel and expenses, is like you still see a lot of companies out there, also here in Europe, who are poorly automated and using fragmented tools to do so. And obviously, I think the upcoming of the digital cards really increases and enhances like the usage by us as employees, and I think this is a big advantage. But don't forget that still out there, if you see how much legacy is out there, the experience for you and for myself personally as well, and I've seen it also in my previous companies, is still not up to par. So I think it's great that we're now also talking about this topic, but there's still so much that needs to be done to really give all our employees, which we are ourselves as well, really that experience, because you do want to have that seamless experience. And I think with corporate cards, with of course the flexibility, the dynamics of the amounts which you can put on those cards, etc., you can make it really available to everyone. But I think, I don't know if you agree, but they're still like quite ahead before everyone really can benefit of this one. But like, I'm really looking forward that it's becoming more mainstream for a lot of companies.
Okay, thanks, Koen. So I take away user experience also key, but also education is needed because not everybody's there yet to see the advantage.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, thank you. Next one, Christian.
Yeah, thank you, Sophie. From my perspective, adding to the previous speakers, I think we can also talk about the personas. I mean, you were talking about the user perspective and the user benefits, and I think if you look in the companies, first of all, I would totally agree. There's a lot of potential still there to be unlocked in terms of automating payment and digitalizing payment. But there's also different kind of personas in the company, and that's what we need to think about. Like you have blue-collar workers, which might not necessarily have a credibility for a own corporate card. So depending on the contract type you choose for a corporate card, you can also take a virtual card and have it case by case being created. That's one aspect to think about, and on the other aspect, it's really it's also driving compliance, because if you have like a case-by-case credit card, you can, for instance, lock out special spend categories or even merchant categories, like you don't want to go to your people or you don't want your people to go to specific shops or something. You can block this out or enable it as you please. So there's a lot of flexibility, empowering the payment process. It enables, and I think we were talking about this, Gijs. It's about having those expense line items on from the credit card to the expense, the reconciliation, and it's also like driving a bit in certain ways compliance.
Okay, thank you, Christian. So taking away that depending on who the card will be using, the setup will be different. Is there anything maybe you want to share about the freedom that you would give to employees as well? Good and bad?
I would totally get back to the company's culture. The freedom is really something I think that's really deep-rooted into the company's DNA, and you really need to look at it from a supplier perspective, like what's the customer, what's he's going to take care of. However, there might be, if you look at this merchant category table, I think there are 800 line items. You can maybe pick some you really don't want to have. That's something you can do, but then again, talk to the HR guys in those companies, in your prospects, and yeah, but maybe HR, hey, that's your cue, I guess.
No, but I think we all know now, especially in these days, 2024 and beyond, like retention of our people is utmost importance, and the experience we as employers give towards employees is crucial. So I think you have something in hand here as well to offer towards employees and to maybe give a little bit more of that trust, because to build a stronger band, to be a better employer by providing these kind of digital solutions. Yeah. But again, then you need to embrace them, obviously. That's for sure. But I don't know, Gijs, with...
Yeah, yes.
Yeah, to allude to that, especially with the virtual card element here. So let's go back to the traveler, right? What they don't want is to pay themselves for what they do in travel, right? I don't want to pay for my flight because hundreds of euros. Those hotel rates go crazy. So I mean, easily for a trip it costs €1,000. I don't want to pay for that myself, right? So that's the essential thing. Then you have the contradiction of a company that says, I'm not going to give my employees a corporate card, but you know, there's so many, let's say, different solutions like a virtual company card, which then per booking can create actually a single virtual card. And that's something that you can control, right? I am allowing my people to say, listen, you can charge on this virtual card, the hotel room, plus breakfast, plus dinner. Or maybe some other stuff, like have fun, it's €500, do whatever you want, right? So you can control as a company. So there is quite some flexibility, but the essential thing here, travelers don't like to pay themselves for travel. So.
No, thank you. I think great insights. So takeaway would be like, let's give employees the trust to build a better relationship between employer and employees, but also limit and or make clear guidelines and limit what they can spend and what they cannot spend, because if they don't have to pay out of pocket, that is a nice perk to have, right? So, yeah. All right, going to the next question. So companies often use different systems to manage their travel and expenses, and this is logic because in most cases, companies have very specific needs. This brings us to best of breed solutions in travel and expense. Now, yes, from your perspective, how do you see the role of a best of breed solution like Agencia when integrating with expense solutions? And I think we will be discussing here integrations and data flows. So we have prepared for the audience at home a diagram. For the audience at home, it could be a bit too small, apologies for that, but I'm sure that the guys here will explain a bit better how it works. So yes, starting with you.
Yeah, so let's say from a legacy perspective, a lot of companies in their own industries have been doing very well what they do well, right? Like an expense company, like a travel company, like an HR company, right? Everybody does its own thing, but it's always been very siloed, right? Nowadays, we see more and more blending situations where companies have different demands, right? So from a corporate perspective, I demand that my travel supplier would also provide specific data to that other third party or back to my ERP, right? So in this case, what you see a lot is that the blending element and therefore the connectivity or providing APIs is a key element here to actually drive that data streams. So simple as what we do, right, with MXP, with Agencia, what we've built, we really provided that connectivity in an open framework, an open API setup where we connect. Right, in this case, and especially on the flowchart, what you see here, right, you see all the different boxes, right? You got HR, you got the ERP system, you got the expense system, you got the travel environment, and in this case, how can we connect those boxes? We need to kill the complexity. We need to, let's say, delete those silos, and therefore I think that all the connectivity and the blending here comes in. The key thing here is what is the source of truth, right? In this case, is it the corporate card, which I think is pretty much the driver, but in this case, and what you see on the framework here, MXP is a key driver here, right? You need to get specific profile data. You need to push back specific data to the finance system of the organization. But on the other hand, the travelers need to do their thing, meaning booking a trip, right? So it's the data flow from HR to MXP. MXP feeds the travel agency. Then the data comes back, automated, pre-populated information. And I think that's the one essential thing here. You need to break the silos, because if you don't do that, it becomes more complex. You don't want to be all the parties on their own island. And I think that's the main essential thing here is that you cannot do it alone. And you see more and more companies saying, hey, I was a travel company, now I'm becoming a travel and expense company, or even a travel payment and expense company, right? So you need to rethink, the industry needs to rethink itself on how can we be more in the forefront. Could be, I'm going to connect on a, let's say, fully automated way with two different companies, or I'm going to use my proprietary technology to do that, or you're going to use a white label. But at any point, you need to build that connectivity, otherwise you're lost.
Okay, thank you, yes. So yeah, I think silos have been discussed, so we need to break them down. No doubt data data is important, the right data flows. I think, Christian, question to you. You're an expert in integrating travel and expense solutions.
Well, thank you for the experts. From my perspective, what most of our envisioning is kind of end end-integration. And if I mean end-to-end, it's like really you start the process in the HR with the user provisioning, like the master data, like you're Sofie, you're female, that's your cost center, and your date of birth, da. And you want to have that ended up somewhere in the process, like in the digital archive of your expenses. And that should be like seamless, not redundant, and it should be automated in order to work. And in order to make that happen, what we tend to do is we start really by looking at what are the sourcing systems and what are the target systems. Where does the data move from which system to which system, and also in which use case? Because you have a lot of different use cases there. Like, I don't know, from Agencia, you're pre-populating travel data, like the dates, the travel booking measures, and so on. But there are also other use cases in terms of employee master data management. One big thing is, and this is really heavy for compliance, new entrants in the company and also exits. So if a member of your company is going to exit, you want to make sure that he does not have access anymore to, let's say, Janssen, to the platform or to the expenses, because there's a central payment maybe behind it, which he would be still eligible to use, and so the company pays travel, which he is actually not doing for a current employer, basically. So and what we do is we look at for instance, in this example, at the HR system, and then also in the finance system to say, if we want to make clear have this end-to-end integration, we need to match the data which are in the HR system and the finance system. And one example we had there is, for instance, this is really talking two different systems, like one HR system from company A, another FI system from company B, let's say Workday and SAP. They had a different setup in their employee ID structure. So it was a global employee ID in the HR field, but it was a vendor number in the FI arena. So, and when looking at it, you will finally end up with not matching data. And so we really need to go, and that's really, it's a headache in most cases. But once you're sorted through, you can identify those gaps, and then you can think about, okay, how to mitigate them in terms of how do we find a mapping table, or how do we make sure that the data we need are actually updated and regularly and frequently available. So that's what we try to do, like really to go to the proverbial devil in the detail.
Yeah, okay.
Maybe jumping into that, because you said about compliance, right? And if someone leaves the company, what happens then, right? So imagine if everything needs to be done manually, right? So there's one person from HR saying, let me send an email because this person I think is, he actually left last week. Okay, but does he still has his card? Does he still have access to the travel portal? So would he still be able to book travel? So from a fraud perspective, right, you need to cut that line at some point. So I think, therefore, again, connectivity plays a crucial role, right? Having a weekly mapped file from your HR system to a travel tool on a weekly basis, that doesn't work, especially nowadays, right? So the moment you say in your HR system, stop, red cross, then on the other side, it should happen as well. Exactly. So again, from a fraud perspective, that also plays a very key role. Yeah.
And maybe, I think we are discussing here, of course, like the back end side, how important it is to have this data flow. But I think best of breed also comes into play when it comes to the employee satisfaction and usage. Because again, like not everyone has or corporate cards or now virtual cards yet. Hopefully more and more will be used, right? So as well, like me as an employee, I also want to have a very clear view. I want to have one view in my HR tool, ideally, where I see all my expenses which I created, because eventually it needs to be paid out, hopefully on time. So I want to see the right data, so eventually also I got, of course, paid back the right amount, including my salary on time. So also from the user experience, therefore, best of breed is so important to have that experience again for the employee.
And if I may use just one example.
Absolutely.
So 2 years ago, we had a great new customer. Actually, it was a customer of MXP. And in their previous situation, they work with a travel management company that wasn't, let's say, capable of providing that connectivity. They didn't have an API with MXP. So from a travel user experience, again, what you're saying, it was a broken chain. So people needed to do this. They had multiple tools. It didn't flow through. Once I start a trip in mobile expense getting an approval, I wasn't automatically forwarded to my travel tool. Therefore, I needed to re-enter everything again. Things go manual, right? So in this case, what we've done, and this was a very good, it's a very good use case, because with the car provider, with MXP, with the customer, and with us, we sat together. We had implemented this customer. It's a very large global customer in 1.5 months' time, because we sat together. We had that connectivity already set up. So therefore, connecting the change was much easier. And that actually was a very good success case.
Okay, thank you for sharing, guys. Yeah, I think that's a really nice example of how we can actually, together with all our best-of-breed solutions, create added value for the customer. Moving on to the next question. So we already talked about integrations and the importance of data. Next topic would be, when talking about the adoption of new technology, and I'm looking at Koen, from an HR perspective, what do you think, or how do you think that corporate credit cards and best-of-breed solutions will increase employee engagement, but also more in general, what do you think is crucial from an HR perspective to adopt new technologies?
Yeah, in the end, any technology, of course, also when it comes to your travel experience, you as a employee, it needs to be as seamless as possible. We all know how it is when you're working with Apple or the big brands. I mean, it needs to be usable without any manual. So that's the experience which I expect. And in this group, I think I'm even, like, at least from the gentlemen, I say I'm the youngest. But again, I'm also still a millennial. So if we look at the different generations, of course, they already expect a difference when it comes to how they perceive a travel. And they do expect travel when they work for an employer. So I think that adoption is key. And we sometimes forget that when it comes to adoption, it's also very important that we as vendors and eventually also providers as employers, we need to be very clear when it comes to our documentation, how that works, right? And sometimes we also forget that we documented once on our Confluence, Notion, and we never repeat it once again towards our employees. And I have just one example myself. I mean, I'm lucky. I mean, I'm responsible for the Benelux, so I don't travel much. Brussels, that's like for me like a treat, and which means I travel typically only in the Netherlands and Belgium. So once I need to travel to Munich, to Dublin, to one of our offices, or I don't use it that much. So once I go into that tool, it needs to also, for me, I'm tech savvy, I dare to say, but still it needs to work as seamless as possible. So for me, it's also important that HR teams or the teams who providing those services, you need to keep iterating that message towards the people. So the moment they are using it, it is as smooth as possible, because otherwise it's also directly a glitch in their experience. And that's just from the booking of the travel. Yeah. And then I don't talk about, for instance, when you have maybe a virtual card with a certain limit, but you still need to reimburse because, of course, you go over the limit when you book something, or you want to expense that little extra dinner which you're doing on that location. And also there, you want to have a seamless experience for eventually getting it reimbursed and expensed for you as a person. So I think, like, the easiness of use, the way we make sure it's really properly documented, and we keep repeating how that process can work. Yeah. And therefore, again, coming back towards our best of breed, I believe so strongly, also ourselves, we can't, as an HR provider, we are trying to digitalize all the employee journeys for our customers, but we are not experts in traveling or in expenses. So we need to work together to offer eventually that seamless experience towards employees, which sounds so easy. It isn't, but therefore it's so important to work closely together.
To bring the same message.
Even Chris wanted to add.
I just wanted to add on this what you just said, like the user experience. But if you're not using the tool so often, and then you have all these nitty gritty glitches, so to call them, like the credit card limit was maxed or whatever. I mean, there are a lot of there's a lot of examples we can think of. So I was saying before, like, look at the devil in the detail, but also, like, look at the overarching use cases you wanna solve. Actually, you want to solve user problems with that tool. Not only look at the internal finance perspective, streamlining, compliance, efficiency, automation, but also keep the user's mindset in mind, so to say. What does he want to achieve? And that's something we tend, and that's what we also, and I think we're a bit prone as a consulting agency as well to forget that at times. But that's something we really try to get back to our customers and say, what is the user perspective in this? And in all these groups, it's really like there's IT, there's HR, there's finance, and so on, all those specialists, but users rarely are in the very beginning of any implementation or integration project.
Yeah.
So let's bring them in.
Nice insight. Thank you. Yeah.
What we tend to forget, so we talk about a lot of departments, right? We all talk about that every typical employee follows the rules that they need to provide that or use that specific tool. Trust me, there are many cases it doesn't happen, right? So the thing is, user experience builds trust. When you are able to steer your people towards the policy, the mandatory solution you use as a company, that actually creates better company results. So a few years ago, we did a research with, we supported with Harvard Business Review. What they've done, they actually found out, and the results really were very good, was if you have a strong company policy, travel policy, and let's say as a traveler, I feel I'm trusted when I travel. I have convenient solutions, it's easy to use, perhaps I have a card. When I go travel, I feel supported, right? Meaning, I'm relaxed, I'm allowed to actually stay a day before because I can rest because the next meeting, the next day is very important, right? Imagine, you need to fly economy class to US, okay, maybe that's critical from a sustainability perspective, but let's say from a more hierarchical perspective, sometimes that plays a role, but as a traveler, as an employee, I want to be making sure I'm confident that I'm doing that meeting. And if I'm doing that well, because I'm supported by my company, it impacts actually the company results. So we're talking here about HR needs to do something right or IT needs to do something right. It's in fact impacting your company results. And that's sometimes not even visible. But again, it does have an impact.
Yeah, absolutely. Employees becoming more productive and can focus on what they really need and love to do, right? Yeah. So thank you, Gijs. So coming to our almost last question. When we already had the integrations, we have talked about how adopting new technologies, but then diving into the real finance side of things. Real-time visibility in spending empower finance teams to adjust and optimize their budgets. What do you think are the key trends, or what are the key trends you see today, but also what do you think for the future will be the way how companies manage their travel budgets, but also budgets in general? Maybe yes, or
well,
Christian. Yeah, Christian, you want to go? Yeah.
We all jumped directly to that question. Yeah.
Important one.
Immediate answer, exactly. To be honest with you, I don't have a very clear and crisp answer on this one, because I think the future holds a lot of different, not to say challenges, but perspectives in place. However, what we see is with, and you mentioned it in terms of real time, we have a real time view. We have a much better view because we capture a lot of more data points by using the credit card than just scanning a receipt and manually enter, okay, this was a parking receipt or whatever. I think that's also one of the foundation for, and we didn't talk about this, but also for sustainability management. So CO2 values, and I mean, you might be laughing, but at some time, and I bring this example every day, like you have a fueling receipt, like you fill up your rental car, okay, that's some liters, that's super, that's diesel, whatever, or electric charge, that transfers into CO2 value, okay, that's fine. But the Snickers bar you buy with it at the petrol station, at the gas station, that also has a CO2 imprint. And that's something, it's a bit laughable. I agree, but I think, maybe not next year or the year after, but maybe in 5 to 7 years, I don't know, we will have that level of granularity in our reportings, because it's going to get much more important that we can track those exciting data items. Yeah. So that's my take on it. Yeah.
No, it's actually an interesting one, like, because eventually, and it comes back to best of breed, if we capture those data points, and just imagine you are in your HR tool in your mobile app, and you can also kind of reward people in companies of their sustainable footprint. And if you capture these kind of things, and again, like a company like ourselves as well, we are, like, sustainability is such highly rated in our organization, because this is the way you attract talent, especially when you identify yourself with brands like ourselves, right?
From an auditing perspective, I mean, we are always talking now about AI-based auditing of expenses, like receipts and so on, and you know, doing the nitty-gritties on the receipt level. But what I also think is what's going to happen is the more contextual approach in doing the audit. Like you have, I don't know, 5 different receipt categories in one expense statement, or maybe across several expense statements. It will also be nice. So the more data points we can gather by usage of credit card and maybe other means which are going to be upcoming, we are able to have a much more better, maybe an ex post reporting, yes, okay, but it will be much more contextual and much more, gives much more visibility to auditing people in terms of driving compliance and so on, for misusage, for fraud, even in the very details of the expense statements, which nowadays just, you know, pass by. You don't even notice. Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
And coming back first to, well, I think there are a few things. Gamification, right? As a company, you want to make sure that your people follow the rules. How do you do that? Well, you need to give them a special treat, right? You need to be nice. How can we do that? So I think that's one crucial thing, but looking at the sustainable element here, we're all talking about dollars, right? Money, money, money. The thing is, with the, let's say, sustainable change, what will happen is we're going to move towards CO2 budgets rather than just dollar budgets, right? As an employee or as a company, sorry, first, you assign a specific amount to any given CO2 kilograms, right? So it means that travelers will be more and more, or employees will be more and more, let's say, audited somewhat internally by what's your footprint, what are we allowing as a company, therefore what you do as an individual. So the impact will be much bigger. But in, let's say, in return, what do they get back for that? And I think the piece of gamification here is an interesting one. Yeah, will you give them a card? Okay, but up to what level, right? So I think there's a close connection here between you need to give them the treat, but you want to stay in policy, right?
Yep.
So you need to keep them within the lines, and that's sometimes a hard thing, but we're moving towards more CO2 budgets rather than just dollars. And I think that's a key thing. And also making maybe the jump to AI. Yes, it's relevant in a way because to be predictive, right? As a finance manager, you can drill down and have someone or a special department drilling down to Excel files or other files or your Power BI. It's all great, fantastic, but you're going to get crazy at some point. As a manager of a team, HR manager or whatever you are, you want to know what will happen next year or based on what we've done last year. And if we increase budget by 10%, what will be the typical behavior? That's what the output you want to get. And that's typically where, let's say in the coming years, from a trend perspective, that's where we're going. I need to give an entry. What will be the impact? What will happen? That's something you will get back. So something we're currently building in our own travel platform is, from a reporting perspective, you do the entry and you get the output immediately. Just to be more predictive, more analytical, and more of, let's say, a dashboard perspective, right? I don't need all the small details. I need to have a clear overview.
Okay, thank you, guys. Thank you all. So, okay, thank you. So, coming to the last question, and we still have to do the Q&A. So, one piece of advice to organize currently looking into travel expense, what would it be?
If you want to start a project or trying to redo that, look at the responsibilities, the roles you have in the company, and always include the user, not only the tech geeks, you know, always the user. That's my piece of advice.
Nice one.
Yeah, I mean, I can only add there, right? Always, what you mentioned earlier, like from a use case perspective, for who are we doing it? We have different personas we are serving. You are way much more traveler than myself, and we are different personas in a potentially similar company. So think from that perspective, and indeed, don't forget about driving the adoption because it's all about the experience. Sure, on the back end side for the finance team, for the IT teams, for the HR teams, but definitely also for the employees.
All right, thank you, Koen.
And to complete with that, my main element here is kill the complexity, break the silos, right? Because even though if you have your own technology, so you have proprietary technology you want to manage, or if you are, let's say, blending a model with 2 companies working closely together, or staying on your island, but staying on your island, you won't survive. So break the silos, work together in any way, but that will definitely, let's say, where you need to go.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, so close collaboration and then user experience, and don't forget the user. That is key to remind. Okay, then coming to the Q&A, and I see we don't have too much time left, but I think we can still do 2 questions that came in from the audience. First question, and whoever wants to answer, please do so. First one. I have a terrible expense management process at my company, but management doesn't seem to care about the user experience. How can I get buy-in from my manager to improve the travel process? Christian?
Wow. It really depends on what terrible is really what it means. But I mean, obviously, and there's no rocket science answer to this. I'm sorry, I'm afraid. But I would like or try to objectivize the conversation. Like, if it's a terrible experience, is one. But what does it do in terms of timings? How much time do the travelers, the users, spend on the system? Which parties are involved in terms of what's the auditing flow? How many? Maybe if you think about approvals, how many rejections do you actually have? Do you really need the approval? And if yes, at which stage of the process? Could you maybe identify systems, IT systems, which could talk directly to each other, maybe in the same environment, like in the SAP environment or whatever? So really objectivize, try to show the quick wins. I think that's what management always likes to do, and try to make clear that there's a monetary benefit. I think that's in the end, and there is, there will be, I guess.
Yeah, and I think the last one, I mean, because you still want to answer the other question, like indeed, you need to make it visible. What is the impact in this case for management? Because if it hurts them, bottom line, top line, I mean, we have a different conversation, and they will act way more quicker.
Yeah. Okay. Yes.
Well, that was exactly what I wanted to say, right? How important is travel? How much are you spending? And what is actually the impact for the company, right? If you're spending $10 million per year on travel, right? Does it have impact? Yes, it does. Trust me. So there's someone in the big iron tower over there. He will be watching. Trust me. But it's more the there's so many stakeholders involved here, and people sometimes do underestimate that. You got HR, but who owns a typical policy? Is it finance, or is it the company finance department that says, "Listen, we have an agreement for our ERP system. You get something specifically for free as another tool you need to use." So again, everybody's working on individual islands again, and that's the hard thing as an employee. You want to have something more easy to use, which you're happy to use, and therefore be more compliant, and again, be a happy employee and traveler. Make the connections, because if you don't do that, you're going to be stuck in your own world, and that's not going to help anyone.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, so takeaway would be for the person who asked it, break down this. Make sure that you do the business case, do the numbers, but also understand who is deciding upon the solution, and know also how to talk to that person and network internally to make it happen. And then last question, really quick, 1 minute. Breaking silos sounds easy to say in theory, but how can you practically encourage breaking silos? Who wants to take this one? Last one.
I'm just being handed the microphone.
Okay, Christian.
Take this. Okay. Yes, yeah, absolutely. Pooh. I mean, what was the question? Breaking down silos.
Yeah, how do you do it practically? Because it sounds easy to do, but
it's really coming back to people. Like the people who are sitting on those silos, and sorry to say, there are some of them out there which are just not approachable for any collaboration or whatever, because they have a fear of they might lose impact, they might lose control, they might I don't know, fear the work or something involved with such an exercise. So I guess you would really need to think about what's the motivation. And then what we recently learned in another use case was who is sitting there in terms of who's the person, and try to derive a persona in order to find a way, a tactical approach, how to communicate with him. And that's really going then a bit spilling over into psychology, and I think leaving the topics we're discussing right here. But I think that's something we really need to have a close look on who you're talking to, what he's motivated by, and I guess you don't have any management buy-in if you ask this question, because otherwise you might have had a different approach and angle to it. But also show, again, relating to the question before, like what's the benefit in there, like direct spend, like indirect spend. I mean, indirect spend is always like a tedious thing to discuss in some companies, like those costs are not going away. So this is how I would like to approach it, to understand, and then try to trickle down and to really break down in those nitty-gritty holes you can drill, and then break the whole thing down. That's the only way I would, in that short moment, try to answer that. Yeah.
Okay.
Maybe,
Yeah.
and I see Gijs also wants to add like two small things here. Like eventually, if you want to break down silos internally,
Yeah.
put everyone in the same room. Like communicate. Like, it's just so simply. If we want to discuss this, something out with the four of us, and we all representing different department, let's sit down and let's discuss. I mean, so, and maybe the last one, at a chair of the employee. Let them. I mean, eventually we do it for them. I mean, when it comes to this experience, right?
Mhm.
So, and then we have a different conversation.
Mhm.
We need to solve the use case, and not solve my departmental issue. And that's typically the problem, and that typically can be solved by talking to. Yeah, but
Yeah.
but communication.
Agree. Thank you. No, we often see, let's say, failure of specific projects coming from the fact that there is no sponsorship, right? Without sponsorship from C-level or whatever, you're not going to make a good success story.
Mhm.
So for what we do, what we try to engage when we, let's say, do change management, right? Because, implementing is one thing. You implement a tool, we let our HR department do the mapping towards the expense tool or to the travel tool. Nice, we have the connectivity. Great. No, because I think the stakeholder element here and the sponsorship to collaborate, indeed, the communication. If you don't do that, then the sponsorship doesn't, let's say, he doesn't see that. It's not visible for him. So in this case, it's really up to the, if you own one of the specific elements here, I think it's up to that person. But also from companies, I'm procurement, I'm finance, I need to procure. I need to buy, right? I need to buy. I want to make that saving because then I get my personal incentive because I'm a buyer, right? So that's of course relevant.
Yeah.
But does that bring and I think that's also a role for us as vendors, providers, or to break that element here, because what we try to do, if I speak to a company, yes, I'm a sales guy, I need to sign contracts, good. But for me, the reason for success, I want that company to trade with us, right? To have that partnership. And to do long term, of course. But to do that, I need to involve their whole organization. So first thing, who's your sponsor? Right? Who are all the other stakeholders? Right? When we provide them with, okay, what's your implementation plan? How long does it take? People sometimes think, it takes 2 weeks. No, it doesn't, right? It maybe takes 10 weeks, maybe 12, maybe 6. Really depends on your company culture. And if you don't provide them with the right tools, like, from your finance department, we typically expect 3 hours per week. From your IT department, we expect roughly that. Make sure you map internally those stakeholders, get them involved. So really that big advice would be put them indeed in the room. And that's a crucial element.
Yep.
One quick addition, it's really a quick one. I came across it, Stephen Covey, you might know him. It's a great read. It's an older read though, but I think it's still a great read. Yeah, exactly. And I think one of the key lessons I learned from this book was understand first and then be understood. Like take the others in, talk to your opponent, understand what you just were explaining a lot. So I don't need to cover that again. But understand first and then make yourself understood. And I think that might be, it's sometimes a little game changer. Yeah.
Internally and externally.
Yeah. I think we can go on like this, can we?
Yes. But so thank you for sharing and answering these questions. I hope that the people in the audience will have received some nice advice also, and that it was valuable to them. Nothing rests me but thanking our dear panelists for joining today, for making the travel. Don't forget to expense it. And also to the people at home, thank you for being such a lovely, engaging audience, and we look forward to seeing you back at our next event.
All right, that was another amazing session. All those great insights. Wow, I mean, there's just so many things that we can pick up and just go and run with directly. Thank you, everyone, for sticking around. And I think we have left one of the best pieces to last. Chef Elliott, as I introduced very early on in this session, is going to be cooking up something very, very special for you all. Chef, I'm going to leave all the words to you, so go ahead, take it away.
So welcome back, and let's get cooking right now. So here from our recipe, we will go with simple product, it will be our leek and our onions and some potatoes. Okay, so you can find everything everywhere. You can buy them to your local producers, and you can make something crazy for your family or only for you. So first we will start with our onions. You will just make something like this, chop in two. Okay, and we will start to cook it just like this with a pepper sheet. Just like that. I don't need to make something more. Okay, we will add some herbs from your garden if you have a garden, or from the field, just there. So here I have a bit of fig leaves, a bit of verbena, and our nasturtium. Nasturtium is really easy to grow to your place. It's going like this. So people are using the leaves, but also what you can use, you will see the difference, is the stem. Don't forget that you have the roots, and after, into the stem, you have all of the juicy way. The leaves will be the final touch of it, and after it will be your flowers with your capers. It's another way of thinking, but already you have more flavors into the stem than the leaf. So the leaf will help us just to cook our onions. Okay, just there. We will put oil. So for the lactose intolerant, it's also something. And we will put another cheese on that, just to really cover it. At Entropy is cooking of time. So here you will have between 25 and 30 minutes of cooking. Okay, so it will be confit of our onions. So very gentle, very slow. Okay, so just do that. Just think that the time will give more flavors to your veggies, and it will not burn all of the naturality of the product. That's the point. So I made already also my risotto of spelt. It was hot already. So the risotto of spelt lentils from Graines de Curieux. It's a cooperative with who we work since the beginning. It's 80 kilometers from a place. So you can find all of that, quinoa, lentils, spelt, and locally. Because normally all of them come from India, and it's really far away. So for the leek, you have the leek, the roots, the white part, the green part. So what we're doing at Entropy is two things, or maybe more, I don't know. I just say always two things, and after it's like 10 things, but it's the game of our creative minds. So when I check, I have already 3 parts. Okay, so with the green part, we will make a kimchi of it and oil. Kimchi that you will find into our risotto. Really important for us. It will give naturally spices and everything, so I don't need to add peppers, salt, or spices. The kimchi will give naturally the taste that we need. For the oil, it's really easy with all of the green part that you have. So at home, you can just manage to boil in a way, so not boiling oil, but 60 degrees for your oil. And after you just chop the green part of it. It could be also with herbs like basilicum, mint, and everything. So 60 degrees for your oil. Chop it green stuffs, okay, like this. And you put them into that oil. After, you just mix it into your blender and you strain to it, and you will have a beautiful oil just like this. So it was for the green part of the leek. So with all of your roots from onions, young onions and leek, you can just rebirth them only with water, a bit of soil, and after it will be just a new one. So you can grow every day new stuffs also for you. But here what we can make also is to dry the roots. Here it's not onion roots, okay, or leek roots, it was celeriac roots. All of the taste is crazy, the smell is huge, and also you preserve them from the time, okay, because drying stuffs help you to keep the flavors inside, and it will give for our kitchen more valuable things. With that, you can make cream without changing the molecule of the cream, and it can help also to to give flavors. You can just add it as spices. With them, okay, it's really easy. We will just make something nicely, so just like this, and we will cook it like that. So with your leek, you can make it also at home. It's not so complicated, but for Entropy, it's our way of thinking. So no plastic. We use only jars to make our cooking veggies, okay, or the starting of our juice here. So for them, we'll put them into our jar, okay, with a liquor of thyme and a kombucha of leek. After that, we'll steam them, okay, 90 degrees for 2 hours. So it will help to the leek to just feel very comfortable inside. It will be the right cooking for us, and the juice will be very aromatics. After that, you can let them just like this, so you preserve also your veggies like that. So also the garlic that you can find everywhere. Right now you can find also that kind of garlic, the black garlic, the preserved ones. The right season, the right moment, you have beautiful garlic, fresh ones, and we will put them for 60 days at 60 degrees. Okay, it's the normal way to to put things into black stuffs. You can see we have the perfect shape. It's black, and also you have more umami into it. So with that, we will use our Brussels beer, and we will make a cream of it. So for that dish, it was the idea just to connect with veggies that you can find everywhere. So the leek, the garlic, the onions. Those products are normally used for bouillon or juice normally. So here we give them a huge place into a menu. Also, all of those seeds like spelt and lentils. Sometimes we are just thinking plain-based is just a quinoa salad. No, you can have a lot of flavors with those seeds, because it will, when you cook them right, you have all of the flavors that you are searching for. You will have the beer, because it's really important for us in Brussels. Okay, it's really local, and we have huge local beer, and also our potatoes. You will see the muslin, very, very nice, of green leek. So here I will use the green part of the leek with our smashed potatoes to make our muslin, very natural one. And you can add as you want, as pepper or salt. But here the green leek is already with spices taste. The idea is that also we want to shock a bit our guest with our muslin, and not staying too normal. So here for to dress our plate at Entropy, it will be first a muslin. And so here we will cook our leek with our green leek oil. and our juice. Very gentle, so it will caramelize just a bit, and it will give a bit of humidity all around. Sorry, it will be a leak. So for onions, 30 minutes later, we can see how they are. So our stuffed onions, just there. So confit and stuffed with our risotto of spelt and lentils. A cream of beer. A black garlic puree. And here you will have your cream of beer to give the acidity and the comfort food that you want. So here, some seasonal flower as the fennel flowers. You have a lot right now into the field. Seriously, you can just take them and you let them into your place. It will be crazy for your winter. The last nasturtium leaves. We really like at Entropy the tagette. It's an herbs who taste some kind of agrumes, citrus, and everything. You can make what you want. It's your DNA, so play with it. A green leek oil. And a juice just in the middle. Here we are. So here you can see it's still summer, but with autumn vibes. So I'm really happy to share that recipe into a goodie bag. Okay. Also, don't forget at home that cooking is an act of love. Okay. So take time as you love the others, and you will have great meals with great food and in a local way. Enjoy. Take care of all of you, and see you soon.
Thank you, chef. Imagine what one can do with a leek, an onion, and a potato. It's pretty incredible. I really want to say thank you. Thank you so much for everyone who's been part of this Expense Summit 2024. It's been an incredible day. We've learned so much about innovation, connection. Over the past few hours, we've explored the future of expense management and heard from some really, really inspiring leaders and shared some pretty incredible ideas on how you can shape how we move forward. I really hope that you found this sessions really insightful and you've walked away with new strategies, new tools, and maybe even some inspiration that you can bring home to your own organizations. Let's take a moment to reflect on some of the great sessions that we've gone through today. We started off the day with Thibaud talking about the evolution of the market and finance. We covered even some really interesting topics that David Parker and Boss helped us with, and we covered everything from trends in corporate finance, and what an incredible session we had with Raj, learning about the key ingredients of financial innovation. We also heard so many great discussions, a little bit of like fireside chats from so many of these great speakers that we've had the honors of having today. And of course, we were blown away by Chef Elliott and his culinary demonstration. I hope his, you could say, zero waste recipe inspired us about sustainability and what no you can just only do in the kitchen, but maybe how we manage resources in our own businesses as well. Before we wrap up, I would really like to thank a few people that made this event possible. I want to thank all the speakers for sharing their insights, their knowledge, their expertise. I want to thank our partners for their support and the collaboration throughout the whole summit. Without you, this would have been a lot harder than what it was. And finally, I want to give a heartfelt thank you to all of you, our attendees. Your participation, your engagement, all your questions, all your involvement in all these chats has what made this event truly special. But the conversation doesn't have to end here. I would very much encourage you all to stay connected, to take advantage of the virtual platform, to network with peers and explore the virtual tables and even rewatch sessions that you might have missed. And of course, I want you to stay in contact and I want you to stay updated on the latest from Mobile Expense as we continue to shape the future of expense management to make it easy for everyone. I really want to say thank you for engaging in our polls. It's been so much fun tracking and looking at how you guys are responding. We've got all the participants and we've got all the names, and we're going to really use the wheel now to generate and look at who is going to be the winner in that case. So with me here, I've got this screen. And what we're going to do now is we're going to figure out who is the winner of this prize. So it's spinning right now. We've got all the names. There's hundreds and hundreds of names here. And the winner is, wow, this is a name, Julien Sterling, if I pronounce that correctly. Well, congratulations. The team will be in contact with you. And I hope the bag with all the great goodies is going to be something that you can take home and you can cook with your family and so forth. Now, as we close today's summit, I want to leave you with one final thought. Just like we heard from Chef Elliott, success, whether it's in the kitchen or in business, it all comes down to a few things. We need the right ingredients. We need time and we need care. It's these principles that are going to help us move forward, adapt, and even excel. So, from the bottom of my heart, thank you so much for being part of this Expense Summit. I hope to see you next time. So, for myself, stay inspired, stay connected, and everyone, take care. Thanks for now.